Chapter 1069. Everyone was stunned and gasped when they heard Han Fei's, "I passed the level." Lu Renquang's eyes almost popped out. "Huh, did you pass the test?" Zhang Xuanyu's face stiffened. "No, Fei. It's not shameful for us to be kicked out. There's nothing to brag about. With that kind of abnormal speed, terrifying power, inhuman cooperation, and arrays all over the ground, you're telling me you passed the test?" Luo Xiaobai was also a little confused. "Really?" Han Fei said leisurely. "Okay." I laid my cards on the table. I hit both of them. Phew. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. That's right. Even if Han Fei was here, Li Luo and Xia Xiaochan probably wouldn't be able to pass the battle. Outside the undying Soul Sea, many figures were running in all directions, because all the members of the Thug Academy were on the list. Luo Xiaobai replaced Jiang Nanyu and ranked 59th. Jiang Nanyu became 60th. Zhang Xuanyu ranked 79th. Lu Renquang ranked 81st. Li Luo was not on the list. Originally, many people didn't regard Li Luo as a member of the Thug Academy. Therefore, no one cared that Li Luo was not on the list. However, all 4 members of the Thug Academy were on the list. Besides, the list was so high, which surprised everyone. Moreover, Luo Xiaobai replaced Jiang Nanyu. This made countless people speculate that Luo Xiaobai was comparable to a top heavenly talent like Jiang Nanyu. Not to mention Luo Xiaobai. Everyone was shocked by Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renquang's list. Most people might not even know what the graveyard of the Headless Ones looked like. However, the top 10 heavenly talents were all ranked here. Even if it was different according to each person's situation, the highest one was only Jiang Nanyu, ranked 59th. The difficulty was obvious. There might be some special factors in the demonic plant soul realm that allowed Han Fei to reach the top of the list. But this kind of thing happened twice in a row, so it was no longer a matter of luck. Even Luo Xiaobai and the others didn't know that Han Fei was in danger in the previous battle. Almost all of Han Fei's trump cards had been thrown away. Without mastering the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance, it would be impossible. Without the support of the 3rd layer of the immortal body, it would be impossible. He couldn't do it without the yin-yang divine eyes, not without the law of gravity. He couldn't do it without the infinity water. It wouldn't do if he didn't know how to gather spirit and set up formations. Without those fancy combat skills and Run Tianfen's training, it still wouldn't work. These powers that ordinary people couldn't even possess were all manifested in Han Fei. Even so, he had only barely won by using himself as bait. From this, it could be seen just how difficult it was to enter the undying soul realm's graveyard of no return. When Luo Xiaobai and the others walked out of the immortal soul realm, they looked at the stone tablet immediately. Roar, Zhang Xuanyu was shocked and looked at Han Fei in shock. Han Fei, didn't you just kill 2? You? Zhang Xuanyu's eyes widened as he looked at the first name on the stone tablet. He was completely dumbfounded. Lu Renquang roared, took out a bunch of barbecued skewers, and bit them crazily. His eyes were fixed on the stone tablet, and his breathing became very heavy. Li Luo exclaimed in surprise. Han Fei, we didn't really defeat them, did you? Li Luo was shocked. If she hadn't been to the graveyard of no return, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But she had been there. Only after she had been there could she understand how strong those 5 people were. That wasn't something that could be won with numbers. It wasn't something that 1 or 2 heaven's favorites could break through. Those 5 people, if she had to describe them, were like an army. As long as they were within their fighting range, Li Luo really couldn't think of anyone who could defeat them. Luo Xiaobai took a deep look at Han Fei. How did you defeat them? Han Fei smiled slightly. If I have to say, it's my physique. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to survive. Zhang Xuanyu glared at Han Fei. Then why did you lie to me? Han Fei shrugged and said, I told you, but you didn't believe me. Zhang Xuanyu, at this moment, many people had already slipped away. If these murderous gods went on a killing spree, what would happen? Some people still firmly believed that they couldn't die in the ideal palace, so they didn't leave and carefully looked at Han Fei and the others. Some people were pointing and asking, "Which one is Han Fei?" Someone responded, "That one, the one who isn't fat or very handsome." Han Fei's face was all black. "Is this how you distinguish me?" Luo Xiaobai said, "Let's go. I don't like to be watched." Han Fei nodded, and the few of them set off, quickly disappearing from the sight of these people. In the crowd, Wang Santai touched his chin. Such a powerful figure could only make so little money from them. That was more than what was leaked from the gaps of other people's nails. No, I have to think about what kind of intelligence I can get more resources from them. Hey, wait, why do I have to get benefits from Han Fei and the others? Suddenly, Wang Santai called out, "Everyone, information for sale. The Thug Academy's intelligence is for sale, and the identities of Han Fei and the others will be revealed. You can't lose or be fooled. Maybe their path is suitable for you. I'm a small business, and I don't cheat anyone. If you want to buy it, hurry up." Someone looked at Wang Santai in surprise. "You know," Wang Santai sneered, "I'm not talented, but I know the Thug Academy like the back of my hand. As the saying goes, the path of a heavenly talent must have its own lessons. Some people struggle for 100 years and are mediocre, while others wake up and rise. Let's see how you choose this opportunity." Wang Santi's words immediately tempted many people. Those who could come to the Ideal Palace were not weak, and they all had capital in their hands. But the road ahead was uncertain, and no one knew how to go. Wang Santi's words immediately aroused the desire in their hearts. What if there was a reference? Immediately, someone asked, "How much?" Wang Santai said leisurely, "I only sell this information to 100 people. I need 100 people to watch it at the same time. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a loss if you sell my intelligence? The price is not high, 10 mid-level soul fruits per person or 1 high-level soul fruit. F***CK, you're a profiteer. Son of a B***TCH, are you robbing me? What the F***CK is wrong with me? Why would I buy intelligence from you?" Wang Santai said leisurely, "It's up to you whether you buy it or not, but do you still remember anything after you leave the Ideal Palace? Can you still remember the current results of the Thug Academy? Do you still want to know more about the Thug Academy? People should be decisive and resolute. That's all I have to say. It's up to you what you think." Someone's face changed, and he gritted his teeth. "Okay, count me in." Someone's eyes flickered as he looked in the direction where they left. "Okay, if the information is false, I won't let you off." Wang Santai was really not afraid of this. Ever since he left the Sky Meditation Garden, he had gone to collect information about the Thug Academy. After all, the vibration of the Sky Meditation Garden made it hard for him not to suspect that it had something to do with the Thug Academy. That collection really gave him a fright. So, he did have first-hand intelligence. Of course, perhaps this intelligence was not worth mentioning in the eyes of those big families. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, it was a different story. After all, which member of the big families would go around telling people about the Thug Academy? Was there something wrong with their brains? The Ideal Palace was an assessment ground, and those who came here just wanted to go to the 7 Soul Realms to improve themselves. Except for the 7 Soul Realms and the Creation Temple, there were no other opportunities in the Ideal Palace. Therefore, the Thug Academy's goal was the Blue Sea Soul Realm. Could they finish the Soul Realm or not? It was hard to say. The Monster Plant Soul Realm and the Undying Soul Realm brought them too many benefits. In just a few days, the effect was even comparable to the effect of wandering in the sea outside the Scattered Stars Island for a year. Of course, the credit of the overseas experience couldn't be completely erased. There was a saying that good preparation was the key to success. Without enough preparation, they might not be able to comprehend the greater powers outside of battle techniques. Outside the Blue Sea Soul Realm, when the 5 of them arrived, many people had already recognized them. After all, the Monster Plant Soul Realm and the Undying Soul Realm that had just shocked the world had already caused a stir in the Ideal Palace. Looking at the scene of as many as 1,000 people outside, the Thug Academy was taken aback. If they didn't know better, they might think these people were here to kill them. Someone saw Han Fei and said bluntly, "Han Fei, I have information to sell." Someone rushed over fearlessly. Everyone, I know the secret of the Blue Sea Soul Realm. Han Fei was about to speak, but suddenly, someone ran over. Miss, don't believe them. The newcomers were from the Luo family. At this moment, seeing Luo Xiaobai, he ignored them and said, "Go somewhere else to deceive them." Luo Xiaobai asked, "What's going on?" The man from a Luo family said, "Miss, the Blue Sea Soul Realm is the least complicated of the 7 soul realms, and it is relatively the most suitable one for training. Here, people often explore in groups of 5. You can hunt sea monsters in the soul realm and get soul crystals. Of course, the degree of danger is only comparable to the monster plant soul realm, and the further you go, the more dangerous it will be." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "What's the reaction of the big families?" The man said, "They might have temporarily given up on the operation against you in the previous secret realms. Their current whereabouts are unknown." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Got it. We'll go to the Blue Sea Soul Realm ourselves." With that said, Luo Xiaobai looked at Han Fei. "Do you think they will give up?" Han Fei shook his head. "Of course not. Unless Old Han and Ren Tianfei fell out with the big families of the Thousand Star City. Otherwise, they would have no choice but to attack them in the Ideal Palace. This was their only chance." Zhang Xuanyu said, "I smell a crisis." Lu Renquang nodded repeatedly. "It must be waiting for us." Li Luo's eyes flickered, and she said leisurely, "Your Thug Academy really has a lot of enemies." Han Fei sneered. "We'll deal with it when it comes. Since they give us a chance, let's show them. We'll pass the 7 soul realms." First update. Asking for votes into this chapter. Chapter 1070. In the Blue Sea Soul Realm, Han Fei and the others were facing a mantis shrimp, which made them look a little weird. If Ninetails were here, he might be very interested in this mantis shrimp. This mantis shrimp was as black as ink and extended hundreds of meters away. Its limbs were cold, like an extremely sharp blade. At this moment, Han Fei punched out, and there was an array mark on the fist mark. The two blasted at each other, and Han Fei took half a step back, while the big mantis shrimp rolled several times in the sea. It was not because the mantis shrimp was slow. In fact, in terms of speed alone, the mantis shrimp attacked as fast as lightning. The stronger the mantis shrimp, the faster it attacked. Not to mention Han Fei, even the big shots of the Yi family wouldn't be able to stop it. For example, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was watching the students in school every day. However, once they really fought, they would be even more terrifying than Little Gold and Little Fatty. However, because he had the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, he knew the mantis shrimp too well. When they waved their limbs, the way they punched, their movements, and even the thoughts flashing in their eyes couldn't escape Han Fei's eyes. Han Fei succeeded in one blow. Zhang Xuanyu pierced the mantis shrimp with a spear. Luo Xiaobai activated Parasite, and the Li Luo worm grass drilled into the mantis shrimp. Only Lu Renquang had nothing to do, so he could only guard Luo Xiaobai and the others to prevent them from being sneak attacked. The golden giant appeared, and Han Fei punched out with a sacrificing punch, directly blasting a big hole in the mantis shrimp's body. Then Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed, and a nail-sized crystal was grabbed out of the mantis shrimp's forehead. After killing this mantis shrimp, Han Fei scratched his head. "Is this a soul crystal? It's a little small." Han Fei threw it to Lu Renquang and said, "Eat it." Han Fei was no longer interested in this soul crystal. In Wang Sanni's words, the things in the Ideal Palace were probably all related to the soul. However, after eating a destiny soul fruit, Han Fei found that his soul realm seemed to be much higher than his realm. He didn't know if this was a good thing. If it deviated too much, would it affect his realm? He had to inquire about this when he went out. After all, he could come to the Ideal Palace more than once. As long as there was a need, he could come at any time. Lu Renquang chuckled. "Okay, if you don't want to eat, give it all to me." Han Fei could hear that someone was fighting. However, he really didn't have the slightest interest. Instead, he flirted with Zhang Xuanyu and looked at Luo Xiaobai. "Do you think it's a bit of a waste if the Blue Sea Soul Realm is the same as the Demon Plant Soul Realm?" Luo Xiaobai pondered for a moment. "I'm not sure yet. However, from your information and the Luo clan's information, it seems that even the fourth soul realm is the same. It was just that the soul crystal had become a visualization fossil. Although the visualization fossil could also be used as a weapon to kill divine souls, it was more used to help cultivators improve their divine souls. In terms of value, they seem to be about the same. After passing through the first two soul boundaries and arriving at the blue sea soul boundary, everyone felt much more relaxed. First of all, they were most familiar with marine creatures. At this moment, they had seen most of these marine creatures before. However, when these creatures grew to a certain level, they would become extremely powerful. For example, if Han Fei and Luren Quang were not here, it would be very difficult for Luo Xiaobai and the other two to kill this mantis shrimp. The attack speed of the mantis shrimp was too fast. After all, shrimps were born to be agile and fast. At this moment, with the temporary addition of Li Luo, the team was supplemented. Their team was fearless of almost all enemies. If Xia Xiaochan was here, their cooperation would be perfect. So in the first half, they advanced all the way with irresistible force. None of the creatures along the way could stop them for more than 5 minutes. It was not until there were few people and the surrounding atmosphere became more and more strange that they stopped. Zhang Xuanyu said, "I smell blood." Zhang Xuanyu's spiritual beast was more sensitive to the smell of blood. It could even attract the blood in the enemy's body, so at this time, it reminded him immediately. Han Fei also smelled it, but he was not surprised. Along the way, the marine creatures were getting stronger and stronger. The big crab they met just now had such a strong defense that even Zhang Xuanyu's spear couldn't pierce it. Luo Xiaobai said, although the Blue Sea Soul realm is simpler and can be used as a place for team training, the creatures here are also stronger. However, if it were so simple, I'm afraid the big clans would have opened it long ago. Since it hasn't been completely opened, it means that there must be some creatures here that they can't defeat. Since it hadn't been completely opened, it meant that there was definitely a creature here that they couldn't defeat even if they joined forces. Han Fei pondered for a moment. Let's go and have a look first. Just when they were about to set off, in the dark sea, several huge black shadows appeared quickly. Just as they were about to set off, a few swift and huge shadows appeared in the dark seawater. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Dragon eels. Han Fei clearly remembered the scene when he first met a dragon eel in the level 2 fishery. At that time, he felt that dragon eels were the strongest of all the creatures he had met. At that time, he felt that creatures like the dragon eel had thick skin and could discharge electricity. It was one of the strongest creatures he had ever met. Although he met them again in the steps into the sea, Han Fei didn't think they were scary anymore. However, he had never seen such a big dragon eel. Those eyes were more than 100 meters away from them, and there were 3 of them at once. Han Fei suddenly shouted, "Be careful of the electric current." As soon as he said so, with a sizzle, a thick blue light emerged from the bottom of the sea, giving Han Fei and the others no time to escape. At this time, they were directly swallowed by this electric current. Ow! Fatty! Cover the armor. Dark blue armors appeared on the bodies of these people. However, the effect of the armor wasn't very strong. The few of them were like Parkinson's patients, trembling all over. Han Fei was fine because he was used to being hit. At this time, he clenched his fist, stepped on a defensive array, and punched out. However, the speed of dragon eels was definitely not slow, especially such a big one. He didn't know what level the dragon eel was. Obviously, they couldn't be judged as normal dragon eels. A giant tail phantom whipped over, and Han Fei's fist mark was mostly shattered. In the end, when the fist mark fell on one of the dragon eels, it was only blasted back more than 10 meters. Another giant tail had already whipped at Lu Rinquang and the others, and one had already opened its bloody mouth, biting at Han Fei and the others. Ultimate defense. Boom. Kacha. Huge waves surged, and Lu Rinquang protected Luo Xiaobai and the others to buy time. And Zhang Xuanyu directly used Soul Explosion. In this state of Parkinson's, it was impossible to use the instant technique. Luo Xiaobai summoned a kind of glowing aquatic plant. A large amount of electric current was introduced into the body of the spiritual plant. A huge blue cannibal flower bloomed from the bottom of the sea, and thousands of vines directly surrounded them. As for Liluoluo, she was surrounded by countless insects at this moment, sparkling like fireflies. On the circle of insects, electric currents surged. This was the horror of marine creatures. They didn't need any fancy combat skills. They only needed to rely on their instinctive power and characteristics to exert power that ordinary people couldn't resist. Han Fei's face changed slightly, and he shouted in a low voice, "Hold it!" As he spoke, Han Fei had already rushed up. In front of this huge dragon eel, the golden giant was still like a small dot. The void lines caught a dragon eel, and Han Fei blocked another one from the front. As for the remaining one, Lu Rinquang activated the majestic mystic spell and the violent war body at the same time, holding the true martial demonic knife in his hand, and attacked in the electric current. Bam! 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 At this moment, Han Fei was already standing in the mouth of the dragon eel. The infinity water went deep into the dragon eel's body and exploded. However, when he was close to the dragon eel, Han Fei suddenly felt a trace of fear. Even the demon purification pot trembled slightly. This made Han Fei cautious. There seemed to be something wrong with this dragon eel. On the other side, Lu Rinquang cut off the dragon's head with a knife, and violent flames flickered on the bottom of the sea. Luo Xiaobai directly summoned the mist pollen and enveloped this area. Zhang Xuanyu's triple essence body erupted, and the third firmament of the sea-shaking realm attacked furiously. Li Luoluo didn't have a majestic mystic spell and was still trembling. After a moment, the remains of the 3 dragon eels collapsed, and a few of them looked at each other speechlessly. Lu Rinquang's face trembled. "This is not easy, is it?" Zhang Xuanyu looked solemn. "I almost didn't even use my secret method. This dragon eel is really thick." Luo Xiaobai frowned and said, "In fact, this dragon eel is not particularly strong, but its defense and strength are beyond our imagination. And its electric current is comparable to that of lightning and extremely fast, so we lost the upper hand. If the dragon eels were replaced by purple sand eels or wind thunder flood dragons, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been so relaxed." Han Fei looked into the depths of the sea soul realm and said a little doubtfully, "It's really beyond my expectation that the dragon eels can be so strong. Besides, the soul aura on them seems a bit strange. This sea soul realm doesn't seem to be as simple as others say." Li Luoluo quickly responded, Yes, it's not simple. And what secret method did you use? How can you withstand this level of electric current?" Luo Xiaobai said, "This is a secret of the Thug Academy." Before Han Fei said anything, Luo Xiaobai directly replied, "The quality of the majestic mystic spell was beyond imagination. In terms of the level of the secret method alone, there were few in the entire Thousand-Star City. And Li Luoluo hadn't been accepted by this group yet. She might not even be accepted at all." Okay. Han Fei pondered for a moment. "Why don't I go forward and have a look alone?" Zhang Xuanyu shook his head. "I said it's a team experience. You ran away by yourself. What? Do you want to fly away alone?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Together. I also want to see what's wrong with this place." Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1071. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Just now, the demon purification pot shivered. Although it was only a trace, it gave Han Fei a bad feeling. This at least proved that the Blue Sea Soul realm wasn't as simple as others said. Luo Xiaobai just said that what would happen if they encountered the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon. However, it didn't take long for them to meet him. The Wind and Thunder Flood Dragon could summon wind and thunder with a flap of its wings and astral winds in its mouth. It could control the waves at the bottom of the sea like a tornado. The key problem was that the Wind and Thunder Flood Dragon was much better than the Dragon Eel in all aspects. It could be said that they were 2 creatures of different levels. Boom! Thunder rumbled, and Lu Rinquang and the others were already fully armed and ready. Roar! In the gale, Luo Xiaobai held a giant vine like a whip and moved forward in the gale with thorns bursting out. Zhang Xuanyu stepped into a horse stance. He gathered his breath with his broken staff and thrust out with his spear. Time froze. Ding! The instant art had only pierced a few inches in before a terrifying force was transmitted back, and Zhang Xuanyu was sent flying. Lu Renkuang roared and slashed with his knife. However, all of a sudden, a pale, white shadow slammed into Everlasting Emperor. Pooh! Kacha! Lu Renkuang vomited a mouthful of blood. An Imperial Wuji shattered. The true martial devil blade was struck by a bolt of lightning when it was only half a meter into the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon's body. Then, with a gust of wind, Lu Renkuang was blasted to the bottom of the sea like a cannonball. Luo Xiaobai's eyes turned white. Deep blue devours souls. Tens of thousands of tentacles extended from the void and drilled into the body of the Wind and Thunder Flood Dragon like straws. Li Luo flashed out early this time. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he transformed into a giant worm and burrowed into the body of the Wind and Thunder Flood Dragon. At this moment, Han Fei held the dragon tail with both hands, lifted the 100-meter-long Wind Thunder Flood Dragon, and lashed it on the ground like a whip. The void lines had already latched onto it, and the infinity water drilled into the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon's body, causing it to explode. The 5 of them seized the opportunity and attacked with all their might. Only then did they manage to kill the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon. Han Fei didn't exert too much strength. Han Fei was confident that he could defeat these large creatures one-on-one. They didn't have any special ability to avoid the void lines, so if he caught them, they would definitely die. Therefore, it might be difficult for others to come this far in the Blue Sea Soul realm, but it was actually not difficult for Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on Lu Renkuang and said, "Fatty, you're still too weak. Jade, you're too weak. If this goes on, I'm afraid it won't work." Lu Renkuang was speechless. "Do you think I'm you? It's already pretty good that I can fight like this against such a huge monster. Okay?" Zhang Xuanyu sighed. "If I had known this would happen, I would have gone to temper my body. Fei, do you think there's any way for me to refine my body now?" Han Fei rolled his eyes and said, "Why are you refining now? Unless you recultivate. Otherwise, you'd better think about where to go and get some heavenly treasures to eat." Zhang Xuanyu said helplessly, "In this damn place, all the things you can get are to improve your divine soul. If only the 3 holy lands had a place to strengthen one's physique." Luo Xiaobai glanced at Zhang Xuanyu. If physique were so easy to train, everyone in the world would be an expert. Han Fei pondered for a while. In fact, it was not impossible to give the indestructible body to Zhang Xuanyu and the others. However, the indestructible body was not so easy to cultivate. Without enough terrifying energy, it was extremely difficult for Zhang Xuanyu to break the second level. As for the 108 desolate god body, it was useless to give it to them when it was not perfect, because at that time, Zhang Xuanyu and the others had already taken shape. Even if he gave it to them now, they wouldn't be able to master it. After all, the desolate god body took time to cultivate, not something that could be achieved overnight. Han Fei thought for a long time. "Forget it. Let's find another way in the future. Let's keep moving forward." The others suddenly looked bitter, and Luo Xiaobai said, "Han Fei, don't attack the next one. The 4 of us can try it." Han Fei thought about it and agreed. Just now, even if he didn't attack, Luo Xiaobai and the others could still kill the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon. Lu Renkuang took out the soul crystal and said, "This crystal is a little big." Han Fei asked, "Can it still grow?" Lu Renkuang shook his head and threw the soul crystal to Li Luo. "I ate too much. I need to consolidate it." Li Luo took the soul crystal and stuffed it directly into her mouth. I suddenly find that everyone in the Thug Academy is a bit abnormal. This was Li Luo's feeling after exploring with them. The power and understanding of this group of people really made her feel a little overwhelmed. She always felt that she seemed to be holding them back. After all, when Han Fei was still in the Empyrean waterfall, he was not so strong. Luo Xiaobai and the others had also been there several times, and Zhang Xuanyu couldn't beat Du Jianglu. But now, although they were both peak-level hidden fishers, Li Luoluo actually felt that she was holding them back. But Han Fei was not interested in these things. What he noticed was the strange phantom that the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon used just now. Was it the Wind Thunder Flood Dragon's ability? It didn't seem to exist in his memory. About half an hour later, when Han Fei saw the purple sand eel and a big turtle, he knew that this matter was not so simple. Han Fei asked, "You guys fight and I'll watch?" Luo Xiaobai's face changed slightly. "Take that turtle away." Han Fei touched his nose and reminded her, "Pay attention to this purple sand eel and see if it has any power beyond its own ability." With that, Han Fei punched at the black-shelled old turtle. The latter opened its mouth, and a bubble-like compressed water ball blasted out, smashing Han Fei's golden fist mark. Han Fei smiled and changed his footwork. His body was like a phantom, and he punched out. The water waves split the air, and the fist mark was like a mountain. Boom! Under the punch, a black armor burst out, and the turtle and the man rushed out 3 to 5 kilometers away. Behind him, Luo Xiaobai could only say, "Lu Rinquang, use the primitive sky swallowing technique. Zhang Xuanyu, don't explode your soul and wait for me. Li Luoluo, control insects and swallow sand." Han Fei didn't intend to fight for long. He was going to control this turtle with the void lines. However, when the void lines stretched out towards the black barrier, they were blocked. Huh? Han Fei was surprised to find that there was something wrong with this turtle's armor. The golden giant appeared, and Han Fei punched again, directly bursting dozens of compressed bubbles and shattering the black armor. The void lines clasped the old turtle. Han Fei thought to himself, "Do you think you can block it this time?" However, a scene that stunned Han Fei appeared. He had clasped the old turtle, but there was a low growl. Invisibly, a strange power directly swept away the void lines. Besides, that power condensed into a faint white mist on the old turtle. No, this is not the power of this turtle. At this moment, the turtle spun and slammed into Han Fei like a hill. However, Han Fei, who had mastered the power of willpower, was naturally not afraid. Even without the void lines, the old turtle wouldn't be able to withstand the force of the attack. The fist mark was like a bell, and the bulge on the turtle's shell was shattered. Half of the turtle's shell was full of cracks. Even if its giant tail swept across and the turtle's shell was like a mountain, it still couldn't shake Han Fei in terms of power. Explode. The infinity water exploded, and Han Fei grabbed the turtle's head with one hand, tore it apart, and pinched a soul crystal. At this time, a stone tablet appeared in the air, and Han Fei's name was reflected on it, but it was the 100th place. He failed many times in a row, and in the end, the stone tablet disappeared again. The stone still appeared here? Han Fei looked at the 4 people fighting behind him. Compared with the violent output on his side, the battle of Luo Xiaobai and the others was even more intense. Zhang Xuanyu was fine. No matter how hard he poked it, he couldn't really kill it. The purple sand eel had a body like black sand, and Lu Rinquang was the strongest among the 4. He didn't care what it was. He went up and gnawed on it. He ate half of the purple sand eel. Li Luo's insect swallowed a lot of black sand, and Luo Xiaobai's method was to suck its soul directly. At this moment, a huge spirit-absorbing sea anemone exploded from the purple sand eel's body, stretching out thousands of tentacles. Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Soul explosion!" Zhang Xuanyu quickly took action, and with a violent explosion, the purple sand exploded again. Lu Rinquang swallowed a large amount of scattered black sand with his big mouth. At this point, the purple sand eel was powerless. In a moment, the purple sand eel died. However, this time the stone tablet didn't even appear. It might be because Luo Xiaobai and the other 3 attacked together. Luo Xiaobai said, "Yes, there's a problem. For some reason, the creatures in this blue sea soul realm seem to have a special kind of soul power." Zhang Xuanyu said with a sullen face, I've decided to go back and temper my body. Luren Kuang turned his head. No, it's not so difficult to fight in the outside world. The creatures here are beyond the level of peak-level hidden fissures. Li Luluo echoed. There must be law enforcers, but in essence they're law enforcers. Han Fei smiled and said, I don't know if they're law enforcers or not. I know that being big doesn't work. We haven't reached the depths yet. Zhang Xuanyu said leisurely, but we can't fight them. I think those heavenly talents from the big families can't fight them one-on-one. Can they? You were not on the list just now. Luo Xiaobai nodded. But soon. This shows that the Blue Sea Soul Realm is different from the previous two Soul Realms. In terms of one-on-one combat, we have more advantages. Han Fei thought, although I don't know where the danger comes from, I can fight first. In any case, if nothing unexpected happened, only the champion would have the chance to obtain the golden page. Although I don't know what it is, it must be extraordinary, so I can't give it up. Third, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1072. One day later, Luo Xiaobai and the others couldn't fight anymore. The Voidstone Steel had appeared many times, and the final result was that Luren Kuang was ranked 68th, Luo Xiaobai was 86th, and Zhang Xuanyu and Li Luoluo were not on the list. And Han Fei was ranked 35th. In fact, this soul realm was very suitable for him. He had a strong physique and many means. This team's result was actually very good, and Han Fei had helped them several times. But this Blue Sea Soul boundary also proves something else, the importance of tempering one's body. In this place, were Zhang Xuanyu and Li Luoluo not strong? Of course not. Zhang Xuanyu was not weak, but his strength was definitely not bad. Han Fei didn't know how to make up for his physique. As for Li Luoluo, he was still observing her. In the short term, for Han Fei, she was not one of his people, so it didn't matter. Zhang Xuanyu waved his hand, his chest heaving. I can't fight anymore. I can't poke these things. No, I have to go back and study armor-piercing techniques. If this goes on, I'm afraid I can't keep up with you. Luo Xiaobai shook her head. No, each of these creatures is very strong. Different people encounter different creatures, and the result is unknown. Yang Nanshi is on the same path as Han Fei, so her ranking is very high. We just don't practice body refinement, and it's all thanks to Han Fei that we can rank in the top 100. Based on my experience with Chu Qingyan, it's just that her means are quite strange. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for her to rank in the top 100. Zhang Xuanyu cursed. Now, who tells me that the Sea Soul Realm is not difficult? I'll stab him to death. Han Fei sneered. Come on, it's not like you can only come once. Forget it, I'll go ahead and try. I'm already deep enough here. Luo Xiaobai thought for a moment. You go ahead and try. We'll wait here. Han Fei walked forward alone. This was like breaking through a checkpoint. There are 7 major checkpoints, and there are also countless small checkpoints inside. Outside, on the stone steel. Seeing that Han Fei's ranking didn't jump very fast, many people were relieved. They couldn't understand Han Fei anymore. Someone even said bluntly, this is probably a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. Suddenly, someone said, look, it's 31. This fellow, could it be that he wants to reach first place in the Blue Sea Soul Realm? Someone clicked his tongue and said, I'm afraid Yang Nanshi is in trouble. I'm afraid her ranking will be surpassed sooner or later. Everyone agreed. Definitely. Yang Nanshi did not have the ability to break through the undying soul realm. Since Han Fei won first place, it means that his talent is higher than hers. Another half an hour passed. The ranking on the stone tablet jumped again, and Yang Nanshi's name was pushed down. Someone laughed and said, well, this time, Han Fei can be regarded as an absolute expert on the heavenly talent list no matter what. His overall strength is probably comparable to Chu Qingyan and Fifth Glimmer. Someone shook his head. I'm afraid that's not all. If it's the same as the Blue Sea Soul Realm, can Han Fei still win first place? First place in the 3 Soul Realms. Not to mention whether Han Fei could pass all 7 Soul Realms. This was the first time in so many years that he had done it. If this wasn't enough to match the top 3 of the Heaven's favorite role, then there was no justice in the world. Another hour passed. Han Fei's ranking jumped again to 18th place. Once, twice, 3 times. When Han Fei's ranking became the 8th, many people began to sigh. It seemed that the first place was very likely to be won. Some people were waiting for this ranking. If Han Fei was really that strong, perhaps the big clans would have to deal with him in another way. At this moment, in the Blue Sea Soul Realm, Han Fei's hair stood on end. It had been a long time since he had come here, and he hadn't seen a single living being. However, now he felt a strange aura. It was not the suppression of strength, nor the coercion from his soul. It was like a kind of fear bursting out from the depths of his heart. It seemed to be like a cat's fur. Now, Han Fei felt that his blood seemed to be turning cold, as if there was a terrifying existence standing in front of him. At this moment, although Han Fei didn't see any marine creatures, nor did he hear any sound, he subconsciously activated the devil change and activated the invincible will. It seemed that with a golden giant on his body, he would be bolder. It shouldn't be. How can the invincible will be afraid? Han Fei frowned. Although he felt a little better, he felt very strange. When he embarked on the road of invincibility, he clearly felt that there seemed to be nothing in this world that could give him the courage to move forward. However, at this moment, even the invincible will felt difficult to resist. Just when Han Fei was hesitating, the demon purification pot in his mind trembled again. At the same time, the void steel appeared. Han Fei's face suddenly changed. He didn't even see any creatures, and the void steel appeared. Besides, the demon purification pot trembled again, which gave Han Fei a very bad feeling. Seeing that his ranking had risen from 8th to 7th, Han Fei's pupils shrank, and his eyes instantly fell on the pitch-black boundless sea. At this time, Han Fei saw that in the darkness, a pair of eyes burning with blue soul fire, from extremely faint, began to slowly become real. The moment he saw this pair of eyes, Han Fei actually wanted to run. However, this path didn't teach him to run away without fighting. In front of him, the pair of blue eyes were too big. Just one of its eyes was dozens of meters in size, not much smaller than the Rubik's Cube library of the Thug Academy. Han Fei swallowed. The 2 eyes moved in that direction, nearly 200 meters. What the hell is this creature? Just how big was this creature's head? How big is its body? When the pair of big eyes approached, Han Fei had already prepared the infinity water, scattered all the void lines around him, and prepared the sacrificing punch. But then, Han Fei saw the most shocking scene in history. That scene was unforgettable for him for a long time. This creature had a long beard on its face, which was more than 1,000 meters long. It had deer horns on its head, and the long beard between its eyebrows was hanging upside down. Its face was long and narrow, and its body was covered with bluish-yellow scales, which were like crystals. Shoot! Dragon? Han Fei's eyelids were twitching. If his perception was correct, this seemed to be a real dragon. Not a serpent, not a big centipede, but a real dragon. At that moment, Han Fei felt that his body was becoming cold, and the demon purification pot began to tremble slightly. Han Fei probably realized why he was scared. It seemed to be a fear on the level of life. It was not because there was something wrong with his invincible realm, but because he saw a F** king mythical creature. At this time, if someone still told Han Fei that the Sea World Soul Realm was easy, Han Fei felt that he would be like Zhang Xuanyu, wishing he could kill that person. This was a F** king mythical creature, although he had long guessed that there might be such a creature in this world. After all, he had met many creatures who said that they had a trace of dragon bloodline, but that was only a trace of bloodline or a trace of dragon soul. For example, the green wandering flood dragon he encountered in the underground city accidentally obtained a trace of dragon soul. That was just a damn trace, but now there was a real one in front of him. How would he fight this? On the Void Stone tablet, Han Fei's name had risen to the 5th and was still moving toward the 4th. Han Fei never knew that the promotion of the ranking actually didn't require fighting. He just needed to be able to stay in front of this dragon and not run away. Han Fei took a deep breath. Fight a dragon? No experience. Besides, The creature in front of him didn't seem easy to fight. Just looking at it, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. It was impossible for this guy to be less than 1,000 meters long. Its head alone was probably hundreds of meters long. As for its body size, it was more than 1,000 meters long. At this time, Han Fei suddenly remembered what he had experienced with a rock-holding turtle in the level 2 fishery. Luo Xiaobai said, "I saw a 10,000-meter-high tree." Xia Xiaochan said, "I saw a fish that covered the sky and was tens of thousands of meters long." Okay, now a creature of this level had actually appeared in front of him. How could Han Fei not be shocked? At this point, when Han Fei thought of the previous creatures, they were like F***king toys. And he was even worse than a toy, like a shrimp in front of a whale. Han Fei felt that he shouldn't be able to kill it with the infinity water. The explosive range of the infinity water plus the effective shock wave was probably about the size of its body. Han Fei froze here. His body suddenly became heavy, and the invincible was fading. There was no pressure, just a tremor from the soul. Han Fei directly began to burn his blood, braced himself, and stared at the dragon's head. His expression was slightly struggling, and he barely maintained the invincible will. At this moment, he was sure of one thing. That was, the dragon in front of him couldn't be defeated, because he had absolutely no chance of winning. At this moment, he might not even be able to exert 10% of his strength. Suddenly, Han Fei understood why his ranking could rise. If it were others, they might not even have the chance to stand here. The dragon let out a low sound, slightly surprised, stared at Han Fei for a while, and then said slowly in a low voice, "A familiar aura." As the dragon spoke, the seawater was shaking, as if it was vibrating at a certain frequency, radiating for dozens of kilometers. Han Fei was greatly shocked. Can this dragon talk? Han Fei braced himself. "Senior, do you still have memories?" The dragon's head moved slightly, as if recalling something. After a long time, it said, "It turns out that I'm dead." Han Fei thought to himself, "Isn't this nonsense? If you're not dead, how can you be here? So you didn't find out until now that you're dead?" The dragon said, "Your body is not bad." Puff! Han Fei was instantly enraged, and the corners of his mouth twitched. "Senior, my body is not here." The dragon didn't seem to hear what Han Fei said, but said to himself, "But it's a little weak. It can't accommodate me." Han Fei nodded quickly. "You're such a great god. How can I tolerate you? I can accommodate you, but I can't." The dragon seemed to be thinking. And on the Void Steel, Han Fei's name had already ranked 3rd. However, this ranking had stopped increasing, as if it had stagnated. Suddenly, the dragon said slowly, "Where is my body?" Chapter 1073. Han Fei was dumbfounded. "How would I know where your body is? Besides, which era are you from? Your body might have been long gone." However, on the surface, Han Fei said sincerely, "Senior, it depends on where you died. I can find it for you. It's not that I'm bragging, but I'm known as the #1 treasure hunter in the Thousand Star City. Searching for clues is as easy as floating clouds to me. But, Senior, you also know that my strength." The azure dragon opened its mouth slightly, and a golden piece of paper appeared, floating in the air. "You want this, right?" Han Fei's eyes lit up, and he nodded quickly. "The golden page is right in front of me. How can I not want it? Although I don't know what it is, it's definitely extraordinary. How could it be simple to have a dragon guard here?" The azure dragon said slowly, "I forgot where my body died. If you can bring it to me, I'll give it to you." Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I don't even know where your body died. How can I bring it to you?" Han Fei smiled bitterly. "Senior, do you have no memory at all? I'm not bragging, but as long as you can tell me a place that you remember, there's nothing that can't trouble me. People call me Han Tanbao, which is my ability." Huff! A white column of breath spurted out from the azure dragon's nose. This breath was like a miniature tsunami, rolling waves at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei didn't dare to disturb the azure dragon's thinking. Otherwise, a small fry like him would be sent flying with just a heavy breath from the other party. The Immortal Palace. The Eye of the Heavenly Path. Han Fei was stunned. The Immortal Palace? The Azure Dragon said leisurely, I seem to have been to the Immortal Palace and seen the eye of the heavenly path. Han Fei swallowed. That's F asterisk King hilarious. It seems that I won't be able to get this golden page in a short time. I probably won't be able to improve my ranking. I came to the Ideal Palace just to take a look. I'd better go to the God's Memorial Tower and see if I can pass through it to enter the central holy city and then enter the Immortal Palace. Now, this guy mentioned the Immortal Palace and the eye of the heavenly path. I can't even go to the Immortal Palace, so I have to hide from the heavenly Tao Dharma eye. However, on the surface, Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay, senior, wait for me for a few years. I'll find a way to go to the Divine Palace. You know about the Immortal Palace? Han Fei immediately patted his chest. Of course. I'm not talented, but I have a close relationship with the Yin-Yang Heaven's maidservant, Little CI, and a close relationship with the Immortal Palace controller. It's just that Junior's current strength is still weak. I still need to cultivate for 2 more years before I can reach the top of the Immortal Palace. And the Azure Dragon's gaze was distant. Although I know you're bragging, you must have had a lot of luck to know about the Immortal Palace and the existence of the controllers. Go! Han Fei's back was covered in a cold sweat. My bragging was so flawless, but it was seen through. The Azure Dragon closed its mouth and swallowed the golden page. In Han Fei's eyes, the Azure Dragon was slowly retreating, and its figure was fading until it finally disappeared without a trace. Who? Han Fei was relieved. As long as they didn't have to fight. Just now, he was afraid that the Azure Dragon would lose its mind and eat him. If that happened, he might have to use the Demon King's contract again. However, he felt that even if he used the Demon King's contract, he might not be able to kill the Azure Dragon. Son of a B asterisk Tsich, why would a mythical creature of this level appear in this place? Han Fei hurriedly retreated. As for the golden page, he would take it if he had the chance. Although it must be a top-level treasure, he had to have the ability to take it. However, Han Fei didn't know who got this dragon. And who was it that threw the golden page to it? Is it Mom? Han Fei felt that it was very possible. However, he didn't know why she would do that. Why did she set up a problem? Could it be that this golden page contains some sort of secret? 7 soul realms. Why are there 7 soul realms? What is the purpose of each soul realm? The Demon Plant Soul Realm is to improve the power of the cultivator's soul. The Undying Soul Realm is to help people understand new power after they reach the end of their combat skills. The SeaWorld Soul Realm doesn't seem to have any purpose. Is it for people to find a body for the dragon? If I find a body for this dragon, what will happen? Can it be resurrected? Han Fei ran all the way back, his thoughts complicated. Alas, it seems that not only Dad, but also Mom seems to know how to make arrangements. It felt like there was a big hand covering a secret buried in the dust. Han Fei couldn't help thinking, I'm ranked 3rd. Who are the 1st and 2nd? I have to go and check it out. This at least means that 2 people before me have talked to this dragon. In fact, the 2 of them might have even helped the dragon find a physical body. However, obviously they didn't succeed. If they succeeded, there should be nothing left for him. Maybe this Azure Dragon had already gotten into a body and ran away. Half a day later, after Han Fei met up with Luo Xiaobai and the others, Li Luo waved her hand. Han Fei, where have you been? Zhang Xuanyu tilted his head back. Don't tell me that you are the 1st again. I can't stand this blow. Lu Renquang nodded repeatedly. This SeaWorld Soul Realm is not easy at all. Luo Xiaobai didn't speak, but looked at Han Fei quietly, waiting for him to say the answer. Han Fei said leisurely, not the 1st place. Phew! Instantly, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, they were also a little regretful. Even a freak like Han Fei didn't get the 1st place. It seemed that this SeaWorld Soul Realm was really not simple. However, Han Fei's next question stunned them a little. Well, do you believe that there are dragons in this world? Huh? They were all taken aback. Then Zhang Xuanyu looked at Han Fei in shock. Are you serious? With that, Zhang Xuanyu looked at the darkness in the distance. Han Fei, don't scare me. Are you sure you're not talking about a flood snake? Han Fei thought for a while. This matter might indeed be a little shocking. He said faintly, I didn't see it, but I heard a dragon roar. Phew! Liluo immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Next time you speak, can you finish it all at once? There are many creatures that can make a dragon roar while breathing heavily. Luren Kwang nodded. I've only heard of it in legends. I think it must be a very powerful flood snake. Luo Xiaobai was slightly puzzled. However, she didn't think too much because she also felt that it should be unlikely. Luo Xiaobai said, this kind of creature must exist. However, no one has ever seen it. However, there are very few records of it in ancient books. It's just that some people have seen it. But what happened after seeing it? I don't know anything. Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay, I'm just asking. Maybe there is a particularly powerful flood dragon in it. It will be difficult to fight later. Zhang Xuanyu smiled and put his arm around Han Fei's shoulder. That's right. I find it difficult to fight earlier. This is not a fight with humans, nor is it a fight with sea demons. There is still a difference between the strength of sea creatures and humanoid creatures. Han Fei sneered. That's because you are too weak. Let's go. This soul realm is just a soul realm for hunting soul crystals. Let's go to the next one. What Han Fei didn't say was that the only purpose and significance of this so-called Sea World Soul Realm was probably that dragon. As for finding a body, forget about it. If he could go to the Immortal Palace, his strength would definitely be extremely powerful. At that time, should he find a body for it? He still needed to think about it. Outside the Sea World Soul Realm, people were discussing, and someone sighed. Third place, he hasn't moved for a day. It seems that he has no hope of getting first place. Someone agreed. Yes, it took Han Fei a short time to get from the 8th to the 3rd place. However, after the 3rd place, he couldn't move forward anymore. His name is fixed. He must have been defeated. In the eyes of these people, as long as he was defeated, it meant that Han Fei still had a limit to his strength. As long as there was a limit, it was within the range of everyone's acceptance. If Han Fei was first all the way, then these people would doubt their lives. However, in this Thug Academy, Han Fei's personal strength had reached a level that even the top heavenly talents couldn't understand. Of course, even if Han Fei was only ranked 3rd, it had already made them feel that a super strong master had risen. A person who could crush all his peers, seniors, and seniors had appeared. At least at present, this was the first person in the 1,000-star city who could do this in the ideal palace. Some members of the aristocratic families even thought, if they can bring their memories out of the ideal palace, I'm afraid the aristocratic families may directly fall out with the Thug Academy and not care about anything else. When Han Fei and the others walked out, countless people immediately looked at them. These people were either surprised, silent, shocked, or left. Most of the crowd dispersed. Some people tried to come up to buy information, but Luo Xiaobai glared at them. Zhang Xuanyu and the others stared at the stone tablet and looked at Han Fei dumbfounded. 3rd place? This is no different from 1st or 2nd place. Alas, Zhang Xuanyu sighed leisurely. Luo Xiaobai tilted her head and glanced at Han Fei without saying anything. However, this ranking, in their opinion, was already very high. It was very likely that Han Fei was just blocked by the Flood Dragon. Otherwise, it was still possible for him to reach the top. Han Fei, on the other hand, looked at the top 2 on the steel. The 1st place was a person named Tang Yan. The 2nd place was a person named Li Daxian, a very strange name. Tang Yan? His surname is Tang? Han Fei didn't think much about it, and just remembered these 2 names. He always felt that there was something wrong with this. The appearance of the Azure Dragon could at most make him the 3rd place based on the pressure of life. Then these 2 people couldn't really fight against the Azure Dragon, because they had no chance of winning at all. Even if Chun Huangyan came, it would be useless. However, they were ranked ahead of him. The profound meaning of this was worth mentioning. Luo Xiaobai said, the most fundamental situation of the 7 soul realms is that they're getting stronger and stronger. The Blue Sea Soul Realm is only suitable for training in the beginning. Besides, most of them are team battles. Therefore, whether it is individual combat power or team performance, is easier to display. Therefore, It gives people the illusion that the blue sea soul realm is simple. Li Luoluo agreed. Now I want to know, is the so-called prehistoric soul realm the same as the place we encountered on the ancient battlefield? If it's that kind of environment, I'm afraid it's not simple. Luren Kuang seemed to think of something. As long as it's not insects. Zhang Xuanyu curled his lips and smiled. Let's go and see. However, let's not split up this time. I still think that the big clans will definitely not give up just like this. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1074. Now, Han Fei could be sure of one thing, which was that the ideal palace did not simply increase the power of the soul. If that was the case, it would be too easy. If the ideal palace was only to increase the strength of the cultivator's soul, one monster plant soul realm might be enough. Why would there be a need for 7 soul realms? At this moment, Han Fei no longer cared about his ranking. If he didn't get first place, or rather, even if he did, he wouldn't be able to obtain the golden page if he couldn't do what he needed to do. At the very least, he couldn't get the Tsang Dragon's piece. And there were 7 soul realms. Did this mean that there were 7 golden pages? If there were 7 golden pages, it might be a set. Even if he cleared the remaining few, he wouldn't be able to collect all 7. Therefore, the plan to collect the golden pages was put on hold. However, he was curious about the secrets in the depths of the soul realm. When he was in the monster plant mystic realm, perhaps because he was demonized, he missed the last thing that the monster plant soul realm showed. But the undying soul realm had images of a battlefield. The blue sea soul realm had dragons, so what did the prehistoric soul realm have? Thinking of this, Han Fei's desire to explore was aroused. After all, he was originally a person with a strong desire for adventure. This had never changed from the beginning to the end. Outside the prehistoric soul realm, there was a large hole in the ground. This was similar to the way to enter the underground city. A stone tablet appeared in front of the cave. Han Fei's pupils constricted as he saw Li Daxian's name again. But this time, Li Daxian's name was first. As for the top ranker of the blue sea soul realm, Tang Yin, he wasn't even on the rankings. Han Fei immediately glanced around. He had long been used to being watched and followed by others, so it didn't matter now. In any case, those aristocratic families seemed to have temporarily put aside their disputes. Han Fei suddenly raised his hand. I want to buy intelligence. Who has it? Luo Xiaobai asked. Do we need to buy the prehistoric soul realm? We should have experienced it before. I have some questions to ask. So. All of a sudden, 5 or 6 people jumped out. Someone shouted, My information is accurate. Someone hurriedly said, How can you be accurate? I specialize in intelligence. I know everything that happened in the prehistoric soul realm. Someone shouted, Han Fei, I have news from the big families. Unfortunately, Han Fei glanced around and didn't find Wang Santai. This guy actually didn't follow me? Wasn't he supposed to be her personal intelligence officer? However, Han Fei didn't care. Who did he buy it from? Why not? Han Fei pointed at the steel and said, Whoever can tell me who Immortal Li is will get a soul crystal. Someone was stunned for a moment. The money Han Fei paid was enough, but this Immortal Li was something that happened many years ago. After so many years, who would know who Li Daxian was? Zhang Xuanyu was surprised. Why are you asking about this person? Oh, I think he's ranked 2nd in the blue sea soul realm, and 1st in the prehistoric soul realm. Luo Xiaobai's pupils constricted slightly, and she said to everyone via voice transmission, No, Tang Yin, the 1st in the blue sea soul realm, is not on the list. Everyone was stunned. That's right. Even a freak like Han Fei failed to get 1st place in the blue sea soul realm. In the end, it was taken by a nobody, Tang Yin. This showed that this person must be extremely talented. However, since that person was so talented, why was the prehistoric soul realm not on the list? Li Luo exclaimed. That Tang Yin seems to only be on the list in the blue sea soul realm. Luo Xiaobai added, Immortal Li's ranking is also wrong. The monster plant soul realm and the undead soul realm are not on the list either. The 3rd and 4th soul realms are suddenly on the list, and one is 2nd and the other is 1st, which is also extraordinary. Someone said helplessly, I'm afraid no one in the entire ideal palace knows who Immortal Lee is. He may be a peerless heavenly talent in the long river of time. However, after so long, history has long been annihilated, and there is no way to verify it. Han Fei was not disappointed. Even he doubted it. He was just curious. Han Fei smiled and said then, "Who can tell me the rankings of Tang Yin and Immortal Lee in the last 3 secret realms? However, the price is 1 low-level soul fruit per person." Low-level soul fruits had long been useless to Han Fei and the others. Therefore, he didn't need to save them at all. With that, Han Fei had already thrown out 6 low-level soul fruits. These people were overjoyed. Even this could be sold for information. As for the ranking, one only needed to go and check it out. Obviously, Han Fei and the others just didn't want to waste time to check. Someone said, in the War Soul realm, Tang Yin is 3rd, and Immortal Lee is 1st. Someone added, in the 6th Soul realm, Tang Yin is 1st, and Immortal Lee is 2nd. Someone was afraid that he would speak too slowly, so he interrupted, in the 7th Soul realm, neither of them is on the list. Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. There was something wrong with these two people. They were either not on the list or ranked extremely high. Why? Someone felt that he couldn't take a low-level soul fruit for free. So he said, "I know you've noticed that these two people are a bit strange." Everyone knew about this a long time ago. They all felt that they didn't challenge the soul realms one by one back then. Otherwise, they would definitely be at the top of the list of 100 people in the 7 soul realms. Someone echoed, "Yes, for example, some people with extremely powerful souls may not necessarily go to the monster plant soul realm, but may directly go to the prehistoric soul realm." Another example, some people have powerful combat skills but can't pass the immortal soul realm, so they may choose not to try it. Han Fei interjected, "May I ask, don't we have to go to all 7 soul realms?" Someone who hadn't spoken immediately said, "Of course not. Everyone may go to different soul realms because of their own needs. Some soul realms they don't think are necessary to go to, they will choose not to go." Han Fei nodded. "Okay, got it. No problem." Seeing that Han Fei and the others had no other business, everyone immediately dispersed. A low-level soul fruit was still a soul fruit, and they had to fight for it themselves. Anyway, this business was not a loss. Under everyone's gaze, Han Fei and the others smiled at each other and jumped directly into the entrance. Immediately, someone sighed. "Alas, I'm afraid that this prehistoric soul realm may not be able to stop them from getting on the list." Someone shook his head. "Not necessarily. The prehistoric soul realm is quite dangerous. If you're not careful, a heavenly talent may die. Isn't this common?" Someone sneered. "Do you think Han Fei, who has 2 number 1 and 1 number 3, is the kind of person who will die in the prehistoric soul realm?" "Haha, I'm just joking." When Han Fei and the others saw a bright light, they immediately found a vast grassland. There were blue skies and white clouds, and in the distance, there were flowers and trees, insects, birds, fish, and beasts, as well as exotic flowers and grasses, mushrooms, and gravel. Sure enough, it was very similar to an underground city. Luo Xiaobai said, "Don't rush in. Han Fei, what do you think Tang Yin and Immortal Lee are up to?" Han Fei thought, "Anyway, it's not because they're not strong enough. Then it can only be that these soul realms are of some use to them. Or they can get some information." However, what puzzled Han Fei was that the information about the ideal palace couldn't be taken out. Even if they got the news here, what could they do? For example, although he knew that the Azure Dragon needed to find a physical body, he still couldn't find the Azure Dragon's physical body. However, if he left the ideal palace, he would lose his memory. How could he find the body of the Azure Dragon? Han Fei thought for a moment and said, "I don't know the specific reason. Maybe there are other opportunities here?" Lu Renquang scratched his belly and said with a puzzled look, "Why did they appear at the same time?" Luo Xiaobai shook her head. "No, they didn't necessarily appear at the same time. Maybe in the long river of time, they all made the same choice for some reason. So, they may have appeared on the 3, 4, 5, and 6 lists by chance. I don't know how long ago it was. After leaving the ideal palace, there's no memory. There's no record of it. While summoning the insect army, Liluoluo said absent-mindedly, "Yes, maybe it's just a coincidence." Han Fei didn't believe in coincidences. Often, there are unknown secrets hidden behind seemingly coincidental things. Just like when he met Yang Ruyun repeatedly in the level 3 fishery. In fact, none of them were coincidences. In the end, the woman turned into a fish and ran away. Suddenly, Li Luoluo said, "There are creatures underground." The others were slightly shocked. Luo Xiaobai grabbed with one hand, and a large number of demon thorns stretched out from the ground. What was stabbed on the demon thorns was a fleshy thing. At this moment, it had been stabbed to death, and its soul had been destroyed by Luo Xiaobai. A mouse? Han Fei couldn't help laughing. Yes, this was equivalent to the area of the underground city. It would be strange if there were no creatures like mice. Han Fei's ears twitched, and he heard rustling around. There seemed to be people fighting in all directions. However, his field of vision was blocked by an arc-shaped slope in front of him. Han Fei said, "Let's go and have a look." Crossing the curved slope, Han Fei was surprised to find that there was a rabbit as fast as lightning. Someone was fighting with the rabbit closest to it. However, the rabbit could jump in the air and flash. Because of its fast speed, it could occasionally sneak attack the intruders. So, from the looks of it, the rabbit wasn't that weak. Of course, in the eyes of Han Fei and the others, it was not very strong. Although the chance of dying in the Soul Realm was very high, they could kill people and rob their treasures. However, those who could stay here to hunt rabbits were obviously not strong. What kind of strong person would hunt rabbits for no reason? Of course, no strong person would rob these boring people. Most of the people who could rob each other were on par in strength. No one was much stronger than the other, so the probability of dying was small. Han Fei pinched his fingers and pointed to the forest in the south. "Over there, go into the forest first. They're just ordinary creatures on this vast grassland." Second, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1075. Han Fei pointed to the woods because he saw a shadow in the distance. It didn't look too far away. He really didn't like the ordinary mice and rabbits on this grassland. Li Luoluo shouted, "Although I haven't seen these creatures before, they seem to be a little different from those in the underground city. What kind of creatures are these?" When I looked at it, I thought it was quite cute. Li Luoluo pointed to a rabbit half squatting on the ground. The rabbit was looking at Han Fei and the others curiously. It seemed to feel that there were too many of them. Seeing Han Fei and the others looking at it, it turned around and ran away. Han Fei thought, what a fuss. It's normal for there to be rabbits on the grassland. However, he couldn't say it. Obviously, this would expose his knowledge. Han Fei immediately said, "Why do you care what it is? It's delicious anyway." Luren Kuang perked up. "Can this be eaten?" Han Fei said leisurely, "As long as it has meat, it can be eaten. But now, it's just a soul all fake." Luren Kuang immediately looked at Han Fei. "Then why didn't you get some back in the underground city?" Han Fei snorted. "I was in a hurry at that time. Who would have thought of this? Forget it. If I have a chance in the future, when I return to the Scattered Stars Island, I'll collect some." Li Luoluo asked, "Why are you two like this? It's so cute. Why do you only think about eating it?" Luren Kuang muttered, "What's the use of being cute? It can't be eaten." Luo Xiaobai said, "Let's go inside first. It's said that there will be a lot of visualization fossils in the prehistoric Soul Realm. Let's go and have a look. If it doesn't work, let's try it, and then go to the War Soul Realm." When they had just run more than 20 kilometers, Li Luoluo suddenly said, "Look, it's that furry creature just now." Han Fei and the others naturally noticed it. However, this time it was not a rabbit, but a nest of rabbits. Luo Xiaobai wondered, "Are these creatures targeting us?" Han Fei found it funny. He never thought that one day he would be targeted by a group of rabbits. However, soon, Han Fei saw a weird rabbit jumping over from behind those rabbits. To be more precise, if it wasn't for the fact that it was with the rabbits, Han Fei would have wondered if it was really a rabbit. That thing was even bigger than the calf, he remembered. Its two huge ears drooped to the ground, and it walked with its ears. Yes, the rabbit had no feet. In other words, the kick was almost negligible. There were red and white stripes on its ears, and its two big buck teeth were exposed. It had a fierce look on its face. Oh no, because the head and the body were inseparable, it looked like the body was the head. Pa, pa! That weird big rabbit walked as if it was fighting. With a slap, a small pit appeared on the ground. Li Luo shrugged. This is not cute at all, Zhang Xuanyu said. Land creatures are really strange. I just want to ask, are those its ears? Luo Xiaobai said, don't underestimate the enemy. Whether it was his ears or not wasn't the point. More importantly, these creatures were very fast. This big one is very likely to be their king. Han Fei scratched his head. Well, who's going to do it? Swish, swish, swish. On the ground, large tracts of vines and flowers had already emerged. The vines were like swimming snakes crawling on the ground, trying to catch those rabbits. Squeak, squeak. At the moment Luo Xiaobai took action, those ordinary rabbits jumped out with a swish. Their bodies were like phantoms, faster than a mink. And the big rabbit stretched out its two big ears, and with a bang, tens of thousands of long red and white hairs spread out. However, those hairs shot directly at Luo Xiaobai like needles. And the rabbit ears without hair looked even stranger. At the edge of the ears, it was like a knife inlaid with gold edges. With itself as the center, the rabbit began to spin like a top. However, perhaps because it was too fast, it formed a blade storm. Han Fei was shocked. How could a rabbit be so strong? No matter how weird it looked, it was just a rabbit. Liren Kuang shouted in a low voice. Everyone put on their armor, but did not activate infinite defense. Clank, clank, clank. Like a flower splashing on the armor of these people was immediately covered in a layer of red and white, like mist. Zhang Xuanyu was surprised. No, the penetrating power of this fur is so strong. Although it can't completely pierce through, it can quickly weaken Liren Kuang's armor. Bam! In the void, vines stretched out from time to time or opened their mouths to eat people. Those ordinary rabbits would almost certainly die if they were hit. Luo Xiaobai said, don't waste time here, Zhang Xuanyu. Zhang Xuanyu grinned and struck with his rod. Time froze. A spear light directly penetrated nearly 100 meters, penetrated the crazily spinning big rabbit, and flashed away in the void. Puff! How could the big rabbit expect Zhang Xuanyu's group to be so strong? With one shot, it rolled on the ground, and a hole was blasted in its body. However, to their surprise, the rabbit squeaked, and all the rabbits returned, protecting the big rabbit as it fled. The fluttering rabbit fur was like fog as it drew closer to the large rabbit. Now that things had come to this, how could Luo Xiaobai and the others let go of this rabbit? The rabbit didn't notice that a blue flower, bud only the size of a palm, could block its way. Just in the next second, a big blue flower appeared, directly enveloped the big-eared rabbit, and then swallowed it in one gulp. Luo Xiaobai seemed to have done a trivial thing and said lightly, in fact, it's not weak. I'm just an ordinary peak-level hidden fisher. It'll take me some effort, but I don't think I'll lose. Zhang Xuanyu licked his lips and said, we just came in, but it's much easier than when we entered the underground city. When we first entered that damn place, there were creatures everywhere. Luo Xiaobai, since for a while. There are no so-called visualization fossils, not even soul crystals. Maybe it's too weak. Let's go inside and have a look. After a moment, the five of them walked together and didn't separate. Not only do they need to face the creatures in this soul realm, but they also needed to prevent the sneak attacks of the big clans. Once they were alone, they would be in great danger. At this moment, the grassland had become a real prairie. The grass here was close to the height of a person, and there were even taller ahead. In this soul realm that couldn't be perceived, such a terrain was obviously disadvantageous. Han Fei didn't even know why there was such tall grass on the grassland. In his ears, there was a faint rustling sound, and Han Fei heard a low, muffled roar. Han Fei immediately frowned. His first thought was that they had encountered wolves. Judging from the terrestrial creatures in this world, wolves should also be a rather powerful creature. Moreover, only a pack of wolves would travel in packs, right? Han Fei said, "Be careful. There are many creatures." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "I know. Let's quickly pass through this area and reach the forest." The five of them began to run wildly. But from a moment, they started running wildly. With a howl, it seemed that the wolf pack also launched an attack at the same time. Woof! Han Fei. Han Fei, who was running wildly, froze for a moment. Not wolves, but dogs? Woof! Woof! At that time, Han Fei didn't feel good. So they were surrounded by a group of dogs? Dogs didn't know how to call for companions. Maybe because they were too bored. As soon as they howled, there were howls from all directions. Han Fei cursed. "A group of dogs? Why are you squatting in the grass? Shouldn't you go to the grassland to catch rabbits?" In the blink of an eye, from the left, right, and front, many gray-haired, dog-like creatures suddenly surrounded them. These things were extremely fast. Fangs were bared in their mouths, and their saliva was dripping down. Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Rush over!" Swish! A dog leaped up in the air, and 3 scarlet claws tore 3 claw marks in the air. Luren Kuang roared, and his shield flew out. However, the ordinary shield was torn apart by a single claw. F*CK. Zhang Xuanyu knelt on his knees and slid on the ground. The shadow of the cudgel pierced through the air, creating waves. He shouted, "This claw is strange. It seems to be able to tear souls apart." Boom! Han Fei punched a dog into pieces and said, "It seems that this place is similar to the underground city." Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Infinite defense." Huh! Lu Renkuang first used the sky-swallowing technique and directly bit a dog in half. Then, the infinite turtle armor appeared. The 5 of them went into the range of infinite defense and rushed all the way. Ow, 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 howl. Swish! Swish! 50 to 60 of them had dark red claw marks on their bodies. Even Lu Renkuang's infinite defense was sometimes weak and sometimes strong. Fortunately, this was the ideal palace. Otherwise, Lu Renkuang might not have had the time to stabilize the state of the infinite armor. Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu attacked from time to time. Li Luolua's insect army followed, entangling a dog from time to time and gnawing it. When Han Fei and the others rushed out of the grass became a shallow layer again. However, because they were running too fast, the weeds on the ground suddenly stood up and turned into steel needles. Luo Xiaobai's reaction was extremely fast. 5 vines clamped the 5 people, and they passed through the steel needle grass as if they were skateboarding. Pop! 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 Before they crossed this grass, they saw a large number of dandelions, at least 2 or 3 meters in size, floating up in front of them. The fluff spread out in an instant, making the sky full of fluff. Luren Kuang wailed, "I knew it was not simple on land. We haven't even entered the forest yet. We've already encountered so many things." Third, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1076. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The dog behind them had stopped chasing. However, the large pieces of dandelion fluff floated towards them, and the color of the fluff was changing. At first, it was white, but in the blink of an eye, it had turned bright red. By the time it reached them, it had turned dark red. Bam! 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 Under each fluff, there was a seed hanging. These seeds hit Han Fei and the others and exploded one after another. Although the power was not comparable to the self-explosion of spiritual weapons, the frequency of the self-explosion was too high. However, the frequency of the self-detonation was too high. It was like setting off fireworks. No matter how small a mosquito was, it could hurt people. When this kind of ultra-high frequency explosion bloomed, Han Fei felt that this road was not easy to walk. However, Luo Xiaobai was surprised and said bluntly, "What a strange spiritual plant. I can use it, but it seems to require a lot of energy." As the saying went, 8 immortals crossed the sea, each showing his own magic power. Luo Xiaobai hit the void with her hand, and large pieces of sword grass blades were pushed forward. This was Wenren Yu's usual trick. Although Luo Xiaobai didn't use sword grass branches, She had a large number of them. Like locusts passing through, the dandelion fluff was blown up in the distance. When the serpent-like vines stopped moving forward, Han Fei and the others had just passed through the dandelion area. Han Fei glanced back. They're all challenges, I guess. Ordinary hidden fissures don't seem to be able to come in. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Not necessarily. It's not a big problem for them to come in. However, I think the danger after coming in is not something that ordinary people can bear. In any case, I think it's easier than the Blue Sea Soul Realm. Luo Xiaobai shook her head. Not necessarily. We have only entered the middle part of the prehistoric Soul Realm at most. We haven't even found the visualization fossils. Han Fei was also curious. The fossils should be underground, right? Weren't those things dug out? Just when Han Fei and the others were about to go in to take a look, Li Luoluo suddenly said, "Something's wrong. They're insects." Insects? Han Fei said, "There are many insects and snakes in the forest. Are these insects dangerous?" While talking, Han Fei suddenly twisted his neck. A finger-thick insect fell to the ground, coiled, black and red, like a mutated earthworm. However, they looked more disgusting than earthworms. Han Fei was speechless. I just talked about bugs, and the bugs are here. Of course, he wouldn't care about this kind of bug that had no fighting power and could be crushed to death with a single kick. It was like no one would care about ants on the roadside. Even if Han Fei activated his perception, he would automatically ignore them. However, after the worm landed on the ground, it began to melt with a chi sound. It melted into a puddle of yellow liquid and smoke that dispersed in all directions. Roar! I hate bugs. Lu Renquang shook off the 2 bugs that fell from his head with spiritual energy. Luo Xiaobai was surrounded by spiritual plants. Any insects that fell would be eaten by the spirit plants first. However, when these insects fell down, they melted into water. It looked a little like poison. Li Luoluo frowned. No, it's the soul poison. This kind of poison can directly injure the soul. Everyone was horrified. Zhang Xuanyu hurriedly said, "Fatty, activate shield." "I'll hide." Lu Renquang covered everybody's armor and shouted, "Why are you hiding? Run." Li Luoluo sighed. "I don't think it's the bug that's dangerous. Actually, I don't think it's this bug that's dangerous." Han Fei was also twisting his body and running. What? In other words, they were using their lives to attack people? If we don't leave, we'll be poisoned to death. The more they ran, the more they found that there were many of these bugs on the ground. Some would even twist and bounce, trying to fall on Han Fei and the others. Of course, this was almost impossible. At this moment, they were all peak-level hidden fissures. How could they let this happen? As they ran, Luo Xiaobai said, "Wait, there are a lot of bugs." Han Fei glanced at the green and slippery trees passing by, which looked a little gloomy at this moment. Zhang Xuanyu said, "Why do I feel that we have come to the wrong place? This is different from the underground city. Their forest is at least more normal." Suddenly, everyone keenly noticed that not far away, the ground suddenly bulged, and a total of 3 small mounds were quickly drilling in their direction. Luo Xiaobai immediately pressed in the air, and more than 100 vines grabbed towards the 3 small mounds. However, as soon as the vines penetrated into the mounds, they seemed to melt. However, they also lifted the ground. That scene made Han Fei and the others' blood freeze. Han Fei immediately remembered the insect cave under the Seaweed City wall in the level 3 fishery. Yes, it was like a dime. Countless small twisted long bugs entangled together, forming a big bug, which seemed to want to swallow Han Fei and the others. F*CK. F*CK. Li Luoluo screamed. This is a bit troublesome. A large number of colorful bugs drilled towards these bugs. For a moment, there was a fierce battle. Or rather, Li Luo's colorful bugs withered in large numbers, as if their souls were directly crushed to death. Of course, a large number of bugs were also bitten to death by the colorful bugs. Anyway, they were about the same. However, Li Luoluo couldn't resist so many bugs. She was here, not a law enforcer. Insect swarm control. Even if it could kill these 3 giant insects made up of countless small insects, it would not be able to kill them. But what if there were a few more? They still had to run. Li Luo Luo shouted, "Run!" The five of them had just stopped and began to run again. This time, it was Li Luo Luo's turn. The various bugs that fell from the trees all turned colorful and began to gradually gather, running after Han Fei and the others. Fortunately, the speed of the swarm was relatively slow. The only thing they needed to worry about were the bugs that fell like rain, which was very annoying. They had to be on guard against them. Otherwise, if he was careless and poisoned a few times, he might even be poisoned to death. Luo Xiaobai said, "We haven't reached the middle zone yet. These bugs are slow and relatively easy to avoid." As soon as Luo Xiaobai said this, they saw a long-nosed creature that was as fat as a piglet and covered in armor, picking up bugs to eat. Huh, an anteater? It doesn't seem right. I don't know this thing. When it saw Han Fei and the others, the creature's scales all over its body exploded, as if it felt that Han Fei and the others had invaded its territory. As soon as it came up, it hugged itself into a ball and rolled towards Han Fei and the others. Along the way, it was covered in a golden light. Han Fei punched out with a backhand. However, layers of ripples appeared on the surface of the creature's body, which seemed to be some kind of unloading method. Han Fei's punch failed. Luren Kuang shouted, "What kind of creature is that?" Han Fei shrugged. "What should I know? Anyway, it's quite strange." "What's strange about it?" "We have seen a lot of strange creatures in the underground city. Look, there are 3 more balls coming over there." Li Luo Luo was speechless. Why do these creatures live in groups? Han Fei responded, "Otherwise, with so many bugs, wouldn't they eat the entire forest? There must be a creature that can restrain them." After those balls hit several times to no avail, Han Fei and the others finally came to the Real Forest. Why did they say it was a real forest? Because there were more plants here. There were strange flowers and plants, and a small number of fruits. However, Han Fei was a little puzzled. In this divine soul world, would eating fruits make one feel anything? Luren Kuang adhered to the creed that Han Fei taught him. All black things were actually edible. He immediately grabbed one of the spiritual plants. However, at the moment he stretched out his hand, the fruit, which was originally a fruit, suddenly cracked open with a mouth and an eyeball. What the hell? Han Fei cut the black fruit with a knife, only to spur out a bunch of green liquid, which looked more like a kind of blood. Looking closely, it turned out to be a snake. Han Fei was speechless. "You fool, all you know is to eat." Luren Kuang was speechless. "Isn't this disguise too good?" Quack, quack, quack. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came. However, on a tree not far away, a monkey with a red but was holding its belly and laughing. While laughing, he pointed at Luren Kuang. Luren Kuang's face turned red, and with a swish, he slashed at the monkey. The monkey clasped the branch with one hand, turned over, and jumped to another tree at lightning speed. It seemed that Luren Kuang's slash had annoyed it. The monkey bared its teeth at Han Fei and threw the banana in its hand at them like a cannonball. Luo Xiaobai swung her vines to block the banana. At the same time, a blue demonic flower appeared beside the monkey. Bam! 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 The flower exploded, scaring the monkey, and hurriedly jumped into the distance. Occasionally, it stopped, scratched its butt, and bared its teeth at Han Fei and the others. Luren Kuang yelled, "Don't run if you dare, otherwise I'll kill you." Han Fei glanced at Luren Kuang contemptuously. "Okay, don't be so arrogant in front of monkey. You're not bad, are you?" Luo Xiaobai immediately looked at Han Fei. A monkey. Han Fei's heart trembled, and he thought, "I spilled the beans." So Han Fei hurriedly said, "Oh, I seem to have seen such creatures in the snow god's temple. They seem to be called monkeys." Zhang Xuanyu said, "Why are there all kinds of creatures in the snow god's temple?" Han Fei sneered. "It's a prehistoric secret realm. Isn't it normal to have these creatures? Besides, I don't know all of them." Huh. Han Fei was still arguing. Suddenly, there seemed to be a thunderous roar in the depths of the forest. Han Fei felt it was a bit familiar. However, because it might be too far away, he couldn't hear it clearly. Anyway, it was at least 500 kilometers away. Why does it sound like a tiger's roar? Fourth update. Asking for votes. The pace of updating is still fast. Can I have a monthly vote first? End of this chapter. Chapter 1077. Han Fei didn't think much about it. Even if it was a large creature, it should be able to defeat it, right? Anyway, this should be the beginning of the prehistoric soul realm. They walked all the way. There must be monsters in the forest. Along the way, they killed snakes and insects more than 30 times. The most powerful one was a 3-headed python, which could spit out 3 kinds of strange flames. Most of Li Luo's insect swarm was wiped out by it. Even Luo Xiaobai suffered a little. Lu Renquang finally picked the fruit he wanted to eat. It was the loquat that Han Fei had given him, which also grew here. So he knew it. Lu Renquang slurped the fruit and said, "There's juice. I feel that there seems to be no difference between the soul state and the normal state." With a thought from Han Fei, a peach appeared in his hand, and he took a bite. "Are you stupid? Where's this place? This is the ideal palace. If you want to eat something, can't you imagine it yourself?" Lu Renquang froze and was dumbfounded. "That's right. I'm in the King ideal palace now. Can I think about what I want to eat?" Lu Renquang spat out the loquat, and with a thought from Han Fei, 2 grilled fish appeared in his hand. Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes. "Don't eat it. After all, this is the soul realm. We must be careful. Don't the things you imagine consume your own spirit?" Squeak! Han Fei's ears twitched. He seemed to hear some commotion, which seemed to be the sound of monkeys. Han Fei immediately shouted in a low voice, "Wait a minute, there's movement." Luo Xiaobai and the others looked at Han Fei. Zhang Xuanyu even muttered, "Your hearing is really good." Han Fei's ears twitched again, only to find that the sound seemed to have disappeared again. He thought for a while and said, "We may have broken into the territory of some creature." Thinking of the territory, Han Fei thought of the playful husky he met in the underground city. Generally speaking, creatures with their own territories were not easy to deal with, so they had to be dealt with carefully. Sure enough, after walking for more than 100 kilometers this time, they didn't even encounter a large battle. It seemed that the surrounding creatures had suddenly become much weaker. Suddenly, Li Luo pointed to a shadow in the distance and said, "Look, is that a monkey?" Han Fei turned his head and found that it was true. The monkey was leisurely hanging on the tree and eating bananas. As if noticing Han Fei and the others, the self-satisfied monkey bared its teeth at them. Lu Renquang even pretended to raise his knife and slash it. Zhang Xuanyu pondered and said, "That thing doesn't seem to like fighting. The other creatures all want to kill us, but that monkey seems to like eating. His personality is a little similar to Fatty's." Lu Renquang was lost for words. "I look like it? How can I look like it? As for that skinny guy, I can cut him down with one slash of my saber." Han Fei smiled. "However, this monkey seems to be very familiar with the environment here. Why don't we follow its trail and go inside?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. It was rare to meet a creature that didn't seem hostile to her. Furthermore, that monkey did not seem to be very strong. Since it was safe and sound here, the route it chose was probably safer. The few of them immediately turned around and chased after the monkey. Seeing that Han Fei and the others were running towards it, the monkey immediately jumped onto a branch, roared, put its hand on its waist, pointed at someone, bared its teeth, and threw the banana peel in its hand over. However, the speed of Han Fei and the others was definitely not slow. Seeing that Han Fei and the others were rushing over, the monkey immediately fled desperately. Its agile movement was like that of Spider-Man, and this monkey could even drill into the void. After running for more than 100 kilometers, the monkey was anxious when it saw that it still hadn't gotten rid of Han Fei and the others. It quickly changed directions and started running. After about half an hour, the monkey suddenly jumped down from a tree in the distance. Roar! In an instant, the roar shook the mountains and forests, and everything was frightened. The roar was like muffled thunder, setting off a cloud of dust. A multicolored tiger with a body length of more than 10 meters jumped out. When the tiger's face, sharp teeth, and king's aura appeared in front of Han Fei and the others, even Luo Xiaobai was scared to retreat. Zhang Xuanyu jumped back directly and said in shock, "What is it?" Han Fei said, "Tiger, the king of the forest." The moment Lu Rinquang heard about the king of something, he said with a shivering face, "I can tell that he's not a simple guy. It has already written the word king on its head. How can it not be powerful?" Han Fei didn't understand Lu Rinquang's logic. "That's what he looks like. Can you tear off the tiger skin on his head?" Squeak, squeak. The monkey had climbed up a tree in the distance again, pointing at Han Fei and the others arrogantly, especially at Lu Rinquang. Then it threw him a banana. Roar. In an instant, the wind howled in the forest. In the wind, there was a terrifying vibration force, and the tiger's roar directly hit everyone's soul. Han Fei opened the phantom glass wings, stepped on the coiled turtle array, formed a fist seal, and punched out. However, in everyone's eyes, they saw the fierce tiger claw out, and the void was torn apart. The violent claw marks tens of meters long directly smashed Han Fei's punch, but it was completely unscathed. However, Han Fei's punch provoked the king of the forest. The tiger roared again, and a phantom at least 5 times larger than itself appeared on its body. With one pounce, the tiger came down the mountain with great power. Divine Turtle Shield, infinite defense. Sacrificing punch. Han Fei didn't dare to underestimate it. Was it his illusion that he vaguely felt the tiger's roar before? But now he really didn't expect it. In Han Fei's impression, the tiger in front of him, with its figure, hair, and momentum, could be a dominator in the ocean. Han Fei flashed in the air, not caring about Lu Rinquang's infinite defense, but taking advantage of the moment when the tiger pounced, he suddenly launched the sacrificing punch. Gotcha! Lu Rinquang's infinite defense, which he had always been proud of, was directly covered with cracks, like broken tempered glass, and almost fell apart. The violent vibration directly shook Lu Rinquang, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, Luo Xiaobai moved quickly, and the vines wrapped around the 3 of them and directly pulled them out. Han Fei's sacrificing punch burst out, supplemented by the array and the law of gravity. First, the law of gravity pressed down, pressing the tiger's body down. However, it didn't really lie on the ground at all. The tiger turned its head and roared, and a yellow shock wave blasted straight at the sacrificing punch. However, Brother Tiger was obviously not as strong as Song Dragon. A terrifying explosion centered on the collision of the 2 attacks, and within 100 meters, the ground was directly crushed to the ground. Within a kilometer, there were a lot of broken branches and trees. Squeak! Monkey was blown away and finally jumped out of the chaos, pointing at Han Fei and cursing. In the shock wave, the Tiger King's shock wave failed to block the sacrificing punch, and its whole body was smashed away by Han Fei, rolling dozens of meters on the ground. To Han Fei's shock wave, the tiger shook its head and growled. The huge phantom disappeared, leaving only a body emitting a faint golden light. Not only Han Fei himself was shocked, but Zhang Xuanyu and the others were also shocked. No way. Is the soul realm so powerful? Any random living being was a king-level entity? Even Han Fei's fist mark didn't work? However, although Han Fei was surprised, he was not afraid at all. His figure flickered in the air, and the void lines were pulled out, ready to take down this tiger directly. However, as soon as the tiger raised its head, the lines on its forehead turned into a weird king's shield, protecting its body. The void lines didn't work at all and couldn't catch the tiger's soul at all. The tiger's body shook, and the law of gravity that Han Fei had just dropped was directly shattered. But Han Fei took the opportunity to drip infinite water on the tiger. Explode. Rumble. The ferocious tiger was blasted more than 100 meters into the sky. Finally, a large piece of its belly was blown up by Han Fei. The tiger roared, and in midair, a huge tiger shadow fell from the sky. Lu Rinquang was shocked. It's still alive? Swish, swish. Vines drilled out and quickly formed giant vines, lashing at the void like giant whips. However, with Zhang Xuanyu's time freeze, a slap followed by a tiger's roar instantly turned the giant vine into ashes. Luo Xiaobai frowned and pointed at the void. Parasite. Zhang Xuanyu took the opportunity to freeze time, and the instant technique suddenly struck the sky, directly stabbing the tiger's belly. With a thought from Han Fei, the golden giant appeared. He pinched the sacrificing punch, condensed an array in his fist, and roared into the sky. Liren Kuang was a little dumbfounded. He opened his huge mouth with the sky swallowing technique, intending to eat the tiger. However, the next moment everyone was dumbfounded. The giant tiger suddenly grew wings on its back. The wings flapped, and it rose up to avoid the attack. As for the sky-swallowing technique, it was useless. The tiger's body rolled in midair, and its body suddenly became 10 times larger, and its claws directly tore the void within the range of the sky-swallowing technique. Han Fei's terrifying fist mark, facing the huge tiger claw phantom, rumbled in midair and burst out waves of void ripples. However, this tiger was once again hit high into the air by the sacrificing punch. Suddenly, everyone was in the air, and the ground battle directly turned into an aerial battle. Li Luoluo was dumbfounded the whole time. She really wanted to hit him. However, in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, it was too fast and too fierce. In the time it took to show off its surprise, the surrounding hundreds of meters had already been flattened to the ground. Is this the Thug Academy's combat response? First, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1078. In the sky, the tiger was covered with all kinds of strange branches and leaves, which were all Luo Xiaobai's parasitic masterpiece. However, the tiger's body shook. Yes, with a shake, all the parasitic spiritual plants collapsed. This was the difference between the king of the forest and ordinary creatures. The first thing Han Fei thought of was the monkey. It must be the monkey's doing. Originally, they took another path, thinking that it would be easier to follow the monkey. Who knew? But as soon as the monkey came out, it was the Tiger King. At this moment, the giant tiger turned into a size of more than 30 meters, opened its bloody mouth, and the wind raged. It seemed to be trying hard, but was repeatedly injured by Han Fei. This made the dignified Tiger King very embarrassed. Therefore, the Tiger King didn't care about Luo Xiaobai and the other three at all, and directly slapped its 2 claws one after another, shaking the void. Seeing that the tiger was staring at him, Han Fei flashed away in midair, only to see one explosion after another in the sky. From time to time, the tiger turned around and roared. Deep Blue, Soul Devourer, True Martial Devil Knife. Instant Giggle Insect Bite. The sky was enveloped by spiritual plants and colorful light. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Although the tiger was very majestic and its claws were powerful, its body was too weak. Therefore, it was bombarded by Han Fei and the others more than once. However, God was fair. If you were given a weakness, you would naturally be given a strength. Although this tiger didn't have many means, its strength was unparalleled. His physique was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Furthermore, it also had a strange protective power of the soul, like a super fighter that could fight and defend at the same time. Zhang Xuanyu exclaimed, "Is the prehistoric soul realm so dangerous? This is only the middle stage, right?" Han Fei shouted, "What the hell? We've probably gone the wrong way." As soon as Han Fei said so, he saw the void steel appearing in the sky. In an instant, Han Fei's name was directly branded at the 91st position. Liren Kuang fell to the 98th position, and the others were not on the list yet. As soon as they saw the void steel, the 5 of them were refreshed. Sure enough, they did go the wrong way. This monkey had probably brought them directly to the back of the prehistoric spirit realm. However, Han Fei was slightly surprised. They hadn't walked very far. How did they suddenly encounter such a powerful creature? At this moment, the Tiger King roared. For golden rings appeared under its 4 claws, as though they were an array diagram. Whoosh! With a leap, the Tiger King's huge body disappeared into the void. The 5 of them immediately returned to defend. Han Fei's eyes widened. "You can even jump away?" Zhang Xuanyu shouted in a low voice, "This way." As he spoke, Zhang Xuanyu used Soul Explosion and shot at a certain corner of the void. A huge tiger claw stretched out from the void. The Soul Explosion and the Spear Radiance were smashed into smithereens, and a hole was poked through the tiger claw. Lu Renquang waved his saber and shattered the claw with the combined strength of the two of them. On the other side of the void, the phantom of a tiger claw reached out from the void again. Luo Xiaobai entangled the air with her vines. The vines collapsed, and thousands of blue flowers had bloomed and burst one after another, shattering the tiger claw again. However, in the void, the phantom of the tiger claw stretched out faster and faster. Han Fei stood proudly alone, punching everywhere. Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Something's wrong. Where is it hiding?" Han Fei shouted, "Fuse." When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei saw an invisible tiger phantom of a kilometer in size above the sky, slapping its claws, which stunned him. What ability is this? Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei activated the agility of wind and began to rush away. Invincible intent combined with the sacrificing punch, he punched the sky and hit the void. Zhang Xuanyu shouted, "Fei Fei, where are you going?" However, the crimson sacrificing punch was like a meteor in the sky, crossing the sky, leaving blazing fire marks, and even the sonic boom clouds were dyed red. Huh! In the void, a beam of light descended. The huge beam of light was more than tens of meters wide, directly enveloping the sacrificing punch and Han Fei. Rumble, on the void stone tablet, Han Fei's name directly appeared above the 68th place, jumping up a lot. The giant shadow collapsed, and a colorful tiger leaped into the air and jumped back to the battlefield again. Only at this moment did everyone discover the horror of land creatures. In terms of toughness, it seemed to be a little stronger than Han Fei. The battle lasted for half an hour. Even though Han Fei was also attacking, they still couldn't take down this colorful tiger. Of course, because Han Fei was there and everyone cooperated tacitly, this colorful tiger couldn't do anything to them. Han Fei himself was horrified. This was the first time he had met a creature that couldn't be killed no matter how hard he tried. After all, this was just a soul. All of his methods were ineffective. Even if he exerted his strength to the extreme, he couldn't really kill this tiger. This made Han Fei speechless. However, this also made Han Fei realize the benefits of body strengthening. As long as his physique was strong enough, no matter how others attacked him, it would be useless. Below, the monkey was almost asleep watching. At first, it was clapping its hands excitedly and eating bananas. However, as it fought and fought, when it saw that even the tiger could not move those people, it lost interest and did not have any more thoughts. Squeak! In the end, the tiger seemed to find that these people couldn't beat it, so it jumped and ran away. Han Fei and the others were also stunned. Is it so willful? After fighting for so long, it just left? As soon as the tiger ran, the void stone tablet also disappeared. In the end, Han Fei's ranking was only 57th. Maybe because the battle lasted too long. Even Li Luo was on the list, hanging in the 98th place. As soon as the tiger ran, the monkey also ran. Under everyone's gaze, the monkey hurried on a tree in the distance, all the way to the depths of the forest. The direction the monkey went was inside the mountain range, which made everyone curious about the mountain range. Luo Xiaobai's face was slightly pale at this moment. This creature is too powerful, and its physique is far beyond that of any creature we have encountered so far. Han Fei grunted and suddenly thought of a word. A fierce battle between dragons and tigers. It seems that there is no problem at all. This was also the first time that Han Fei felt that his physique and strength didn't seem to be strong enough. He felt that if he could use the power of law enforcement, he might have a little chance of winning. Han Fei shrugged. Forget it. Some creatures can't be beaten. This can only mean that we are not strong enough. Li Luo stuck out her tongue. As a bystander, she was very speechless. You call it not strong enough? What kind of power do you think a hidden fisher has? Liren Kuang sighed. For the first time, I found that a creature can smash my everlasting defense with 2 slaps. This living being is too terrifying. Han Fei glanced in the direction where the monkey had just run and said leisurely, "Shall we consider going to have a look?" Luo Xiaobai suddenly said, "I'm thinking about something. It is said that there are a lot of visualization fossils in the prehistoric soul realm. Why haven't we seen them yet?" Luren Kuang nodded repeatedly. "Yes. Did we go to the wrong place from the beginning?" Han Fei glanced at the mountain range in the distance and said, "Could it be in there?" Zhang Xuanyu said helplessly, "If it is in there, how many people can get the visualization fossil?" Han Fei thought about it and agreed. They had originally thought that the so-called visualization fossil was there. As long as they came in, they would definitely be able to get it. However, up to now, they had been fighting and hadn't seen the fossil at all. Han Fei said, "Then let's go in another direction first and walk sideways. At least let's find other experiencers first." An hour later, Han Fei and the others ran horizontally to the foot of a mountain range. There were actually quite a number of people digging in the mountains. Moreover, they were all in groups of 5. The arrival of Han Fei and the others didn't attract anyone's attention at first. Because they were all in groups of 5, everyone's strength was about the same, so they wouldn't panic when fighting. Li Luo nodded. "Sure enough, we went in the right direction before. The monkey led us the wrong way." Han Fei scratched his head. It seemed that he had proposed to follow the monkey. Also, the visualization fossil was indeed dug out from the mountain. Han Fei and the others landed and blocked the entrance of a cave that had been dug out. Immediately, the expressions of the 5 people who were digging the mountain changed. These people seemed to have been digging here for a long time, so they didn't know Han Fei and the others. The woman in the lead looked at Han Fei and the others coldly. "Guys, what do you mean?" Han Fei thought for a while and said with a smile, "I have a few questions to ask." Before the woman spoke, the others were all ready to fight. Someone shouted in a low voice, "Don't look for trouble. Under the mine, everyone has their own opportunities. Everyone stays out of each other's business. I'm afraid you found the wrong place." The law of gravity descended, and their bodies suddenly softened. They were horrified. Someone exclaimed, "The power of law, impossible. How can you use the power of law in the ideal palace?" Han Fei said with a smile, "Well, I really just want to ask a few questions. It's very simple." The woman's attitude softened. "What do you want to ask?" Luo Xiaobai said, "Are the visualization fossils all dug out?" Those people were taken aback. "Is this the first time these people have come to the prehistoric soul realm?" The woman nodded. "Most of them are dug out. The deeper you go into the mountain range, the better the quality of the visualization fossils you can dig out. It is even said that in the deepest part of the mountain range, there is a visualization cliff which can be used to observe visualization and enlightenment." Another person said, "But digging visualization stones may also be dangerous. When digging, you must stay awake and not get lost." Han Fei and the others looked at each other. "Lost?" Han Fei asked, "What do you mean?" The woman said, "To get lost is to be attracted by the visualization fossil and enter an illusory space where there is a chance that you will die." Han Fei and the others looked at each other and understood each other. Luo Xiaobai continued, "Are there any levels of visualization fossils?" The woman naturally wouldn't hide such a simple question and said bluntly, "There are, but there are also no. There are several types of visualization fossils. One is the perceptive visualization fossil, which can be used at any time after being dug out. Perceiving some characteristics of prehistoric creatures can enhance one's comprehensive strength and soul power. The other is the visualization skeleton, which is the fossil remains of prehistoric creatures, which can be forged into weapons, but the difference between the remains and the fossil remains must be distinguished. Even outside the soul realm, it can be extremely lethal to the soul. There is also," Han Fei asked, "What's the other one?" The woman said, "There is another one that is a bit strange. I heard that someone was lucky enough to obtain it. It is said that after obtaining a whole visualization skeleton, there is a chance to comprehend a certain ability of that prehistoric creature, but we have never seen it." Han Fei and the others were surprised, and Zhang Xuanyu's eyes lit up. "Is there a way to improve your physique?" The woman shook her head. I don't know. Even if there is, it is not in the ideal palace. Han Fei asked, that's it. The woman nodded. Visualization fossils are already very amazing. He could already comprehend some of the characteristics of ordinary visualization fossils. Although the effect may not be ideal, many a little makes an ocean. If you comprehend various characteristics, the improvement of your comprehensive strength is not necessarily weaker than comprehending the ability of a prehistoric creature. Therefore, every piece of a visualization fossil is very precious and extremely hard to come by. Second update. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1079. Han Fei didn't intend to rob these people directly, because they had just come to the foot of the mountain and hadn't even gone up yet. What good things could these people dig up? However, Luo Xiaobai asked, what dangers are there in this mountain? After the incident with the colorful tiger, Luo Xiaobai felt that the monkey and the tiger should not be ordinary creatures. Even though the monkey was much weaker, it seemed to be very smart. Therefore, she felt that she had to be cautious. The woman said, in the mountain, there are naturally some powerful creatures. However, you are so strong that I don't think you should be afraid. However, there are two things you need to pay attention to. Luo Xiaobai asked, what are they? The woman said, don't enter the territory of some powerful creatures. If you come to Death Valley, don't enter it. Han Fei and the others were slightly taken aback. They naturally knew about territorial awareness. For example, in the territory of the colorful tiger, just now, the 5 of them worked together but failed to kill that tiger. It could be seen that the creatures with territories were probably not weak. However, what kind of place was Death Valley? Luo Xiaobai asked, where is Death Valley? The woman shook her head. No one knows where Death Valley is, but someone will always encounter it. Because the companions who go and basically never come out, no one knows what is in Death Valley. Han Fei asked, how do we know what Death Valley looks like? The woman was silent for a moment and said, it is said that it is a low valley in the mountain. As for where it is exactly, no one can tell until now. Although the mountain seems to be so big, there is a fog in the depths of the mountain. So, where you will go and what you will see are all unknown. After all, it is shrouded in fog, and we don't know where to go. In short, unless you are strong, don't wander around. Han Fei turned his hand, took back the law of gravity, looked at Luo Xiaobai, and left. And the 5 people in the cave all heaved a sigh of relief. After a long time, someone said, who are these people? They can even use the power of laws in the ideal palace. Has there ever been a precedent? Someone shook his head. Not necessarily the power of laws. This doesn't make sense. Even the top 10 heavenly talents don't have this ability, right? The woman pondered for a moment. In any case, let's dig in another place. Did you notice? When they heard about the creatures in the territory, they didn't take it to heart at all. He didn't even ask about it. What does that mean? Someone took a deep breath. What kind of creature's territory did they go to? The woman nodded. To be able to survive under the hands of those territorial creatures. They're definitely not ordinary people, so we can't get too involved with them. Han Fei and the others had begun to climb the mountain. Of course, they weren't the kind of people who would retreat just because of someone else's words. Moreover, they really didn't believe that they would encounter a terrifying creature like the multicolored tiger in any territory. If that was the case, then how was he going to head down into the prehistoric spirit realm? Lu Runquang suggested, should we find a place to dig first? We have to see what we can dig out first, right? Li Luo raised her hand. I agree. Zhang Xuanyu sneered. Are you stupid? Good things were usually found in the most dangerous places, which were rarely visited by humans. So, how could there be any good treasures here? Even if we want to dig, it's definitely not here. Isn't that right, Fei Fei? Han Fei nodded. Yes. What we're looking for is no longer an ordinary opportunity. As for the complete visualization remains, we can go look for it. If we can find it, maybe we can comprehend something from it. Zhang Xuanyu nodded repeatedly. Yes, it would be best if we can dig out the visualization remains of the king of the forest just now. That physique is really strong. If I can comprehend the method to strengthen my physique, my strength will definitely undergo an earth-shattering change. Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes at Zhang Xuanyu. You think too much. If it can be obtained so easily, then this prehistoric spirit realm will be able to cultivate many peerless heavenly talents. Zhang Xuanyu chuckled and said, I'm just thinking about it. After crossing a mountain, starting from the second mountain, the mountains stretching behind were already shrouded in mist. However, Han Fei could still hear a lot of knocking sounds of digging. Han Fei thought to himself, luckily, I didn't bring the nine-tailed mantis shrimp here. Otherwise, this mountain would have been dug through in minutes. Han Fei said, let's go to the third mountain. When they were in the mist, crossed 2 mountains in a row, and came to the top of the 4th mountain, the knocking sounds gradually disappeared. Luo Xiaobai said, Is there something wrong with the direction we are going? Lu Rinquang asked, The direction of this mountain range seems to be the direction we just came from, right? Han Fei scratched his head and narrowed his eyes. It doesn't make sense. Did we just try to enter the deepest part of the mountain range? Luo Xiaobai nodded. That's good. That ferocious tiger is too strong, and we don't know if there are even stronger creatures in the depths. Besides, it won't be easy to find the visualization fossils there. We might as well take it step by step and start from the beginning. I've dug it. All of a sudden, Li Luo shouted. Everyone saw the narrow stone crack turning, and after a while, a large group of insects crawled out carrying a pale red stone. Li Luo picked up the red stone, which turned out to be a conch. However, after seeing the fossil shell, Han Fei was a little surprised. Nautilus? Everyone looked at Han Fei. Nautilus? Of course Han Fei knew it. Although giant pandas in the sea were rare, they were not non-existent. The reason why Nautilus was memorable was that it had a golden spiral, also known as the Fibonacci spiral. Even a famous Mona Lisa portrait was a Fibonacci spiral composition. Of course, at this time, for Han Fei, this was just an ordinary conch, so he was not surprised. Han Fei thought for a long time and didn't think such a fossil was useful. But why did this Nautilus appear here? That could only mean one thing. The scenes created by the prehistoric soul realm were either land and then overturned by the sea, or this was the bottom of the sea and then became land. But Han Fei didn't think so. From various signs, it could be seen that in the Age of Doom, the sea must have swallowed the land. Therefore, at this moment, Li Luo easily found the Nautilus fossil. Han Fei smiled and said, Then try to visualize it and see if it can give you any inspiration. Li Luo didn't mind this little thing and tried to visualize it. However, when Li Luo used her soul power to touch the shell of this conch, Han Fei and the others suddenly saw that this fossil was emitting a faint milky white halo. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. How could such a small thing have a reaction? After only about 10 minutes, the Nautilus in Li Luo's hand was silently shattered into pieces, as if it had turned into dust and dissipated in the wind. Li Luo suddenly opened her eyes and said in surprise, I seem to have become this Nautilus. It's amazing. Everyone was stunned. Become a Nautilus? Han Fei quickly asked. Then what did you comprehend? Li Luo looked a little embarrassed and quickly shook her head. No, there's nothing. This thing is too small. Han Fei and the others didn't believe it. If you didn't comprehend anything, why do you look constipated? Han Fei seemed to remember something. When Nautilus swam, it circulated through the bubbles in its body, a bit like a diving propeller. Would these characteristic skills be left behind? Han Fei changed the topic. Okay, since we're going to dig, let's dig from the bottom of the mountain. Since this used to be an ocean, the good things must be below. So, a group of 5 people came to the valley between the 4th and 5th peaks, ready to dig. In fact, it was not accurate to describe it as a mountain. It would be more appropriate to describe it as only in this mountain, deep in the clouds. After all, this place was surrounded by high mountains. The peaks were surrounded by silence, and no one was there. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, the infinity water turned into a drilling machine and drilled directly into the mountain. Lu Rinquang, the foodie, directly used the sky-swallowing technique and began to devour the rocks and vegetation. Han Fei said in surprise, Fatty, why do you eat everything? Lu Rinquang muttered, Anyway, I'm not the one eating it. Everyone had their own means. Li Luo used insects to dig, Luo Xiaobai used vines to dig, and only Zhang Xuanyu was left. He carried a long rod and crazily cast the 9-layered waves in furious sea at the mountain. The mountain rocks shattered and the earth quaked. Han Fei was speechless. Yu, why don't you go further away and dig? Zhang Xuanyu was speechless. I'm not as capable as you, alas. With that, Zhang Xuanyu ran further away. On the other side, the woman who had just been suppressed by Han Fei and asked questions suddenly said in surprise, "Oh, I forgot to tell them one thing." Someone asked, "What is it?" The woman said, "Don't dig the mountain alone." Someone laughed and said, "You're obviously a team. They must dig the mountain together." The woman thought for a while. That's true. Han Fei soon drilled a big hole in the mountain. If this place had been through a lot, then there should be a lot of ancient fossils here. However, Han Fei had already crushed several visualization fossils. He didn't pay too much attention to them, so he broke them as soon as he dug. Of course, the quality of these fragile fossils was not high. Therefore, Han Fei didn't feel distressed at all. However, according to Han Fei's pace, he was definitely not a good archaeologist. After about half an hour, Han Fei dug out a large curved white horn, a bit like ivory, 100 meters into the belly of the mountain. Han Fei was overjoyed. Sure enough, the depths of the mountain are better. He accidentally dug out an elephant tusk. Maybe, if he dug deeper, he could even dig out a dragon horn. Huh. Suddenly, Han Fei froze. Why is it so quiet? Aren't Luo Xiaobai and the others digging the mountain? Why is there no sound? Han Fei carried the elephant tusk and came out of the cave. Fatty Xiaobai. However, Han Fei's face suddenly changed. It was silent and peaceful here. There was no trace of digging around at all. Where are they? The third update. Asking for votes. Tonight's live broadcast. This transition period is coming to an end. End of this chapter. Chapter 1080. F***CK. Have I been fooled? Han Fei didn't know what to say. He was just digging into the belly of the mountain. How did he manage to dig out all the people? Han Fei looked back at the cave he had dug. Yes, the location of the cave was clearly here. Just now, Luo Xiaobai, Lu Rinquang, and the others were digging next to him, but why was there no one? No. Is the mountain in the ideal palace really a mountain? Suddenly, Han Fei had a bad feeling. The entire ideal palace was actually created out of thin air. With the ability of a peak-level hidden fissure, wouldn't it have collapsed long ago? At the very least, he should be riddled with holes. Why were these mountains all intact? There was no cave at all. Damn, I seem to have overlooked something. Han Fei ignored the ivory in his hand because he found that his position seemed to be a little wrong. In this area, there was an extremely strong aura of death. There was no vegetation here, only rocks and wasteland, and some of the rocks were even dyed red. Blood? Han Fei narrowed his eyes, and his heart sank. They shouldn't have gone very far, right? They had only passed 4 mountain peaks, but looking out from here, the fog was so thick that he couldn't see anything. He couldn't hear anything within the range of his hearing. No one was mining or quarrying. No one was talking, let alone fighting. It was extremely quiet. Han Fei grabbed the ivory and walked into the fog step by step. After walking less than a kilometer, Han Fei saw an animal skeleton not far ahead, scattered on the edge of stone. How long had this creature been dead? It looked like a wolf, and most of the flesh on its body had decayed. The whole skeleton was composed of remnant fur and ghastly bones. However, it was unexpectedly complete. If that woman hadn't lied to him before, anyone who could obtain a complete visualization fossil would be able to comprehend the abilities of prehistoric creatures through this visualization fossil. Han Fei had thought that it would be extremely difficult to find such a skeleton. If it was so easy to find it, there might really be strong masters everywhere, as Luo Xiaobai said. But now a complete corpse was right in front of him. The only thing Han Fei didn't know was whether this corpse was a visualization fossil or not. Looking down at the ivory in his hand, he stretched out one hand, and a fishing rod appeared in the air. Han Fei waved his hand and hooked the wolf corpse over. Han Fei didn't plan to continue walking inside. On the contrary, After he hooked the corpse, he slowly retreated. He decided to visualize at first to see if he could comprehend anything from this corpse. After retreating 1,000 meters in a row, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. Because not far from him, another corpse had appeared. Judging from its shape, it seemed to be a pig. Han Fei. Han Fei immediately looked back. As a result, his scalp went numb. Where the hell were the mountains? Behind him was a dense fog, and he couldn't see the shadow of the mountain at all. F***CK, your mother. Where's the mountain? Han Fei took a deep breath. Is this Death Valley? It wasn't that he was afraid of this place, nor that he couldn't get out of Death Valley just because others couldn't. Han Fei believed that there was no such thing as a true perilous place in this world. The terrifying scenes created by a perilous place were either because the explorer was not strong enough, or there were some secrets that had not been discovered. Han Fei looked at the complete corpse that could only be a porcupine. On the back of the corpse, there was a large pile of scattered thorns like steel needles. Han Fei took a breath, and with a thought, Little Fatty and Little Gold appeared. Little Fatty and Little Gold didn't feel that they were in the state of souls. Han Fei had never told them about this either. Han Fei said, "Protect me." Han Fei made a thought out of thin air, and on the ground, lines of spiritual energy appeared one after another. After about half an hour, Han Fei set up a large killing array and 7 defensive arrays around him. Among them, the Great Plate Turtle Array actually had 3 layers of Great Plate Turtle Arrays. Seeing that there was still no movement around, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Little Fatty looked around and asked in confusion, "I have an ominous feeling. The smell of blood here is too strong." Han Fei nodded indifferently. "I know. I'll cultivate for a short period of time later. Don't act rashly." As he spoke, Han Fei patted Little Gold's head, and the latter rubbed against him. The reason why he wanted to cultivate now was that there was still no movement in the valley. If it suspected that there was something wrong with the elephant tusk in his hand, it might know why he was here. At this moment, Han Fei sat cross-legged. Instead of looking at the wolf corpse, he held the elephant tusk and imprinted it with the power of his soul. In the next second, when Han Fei felt it again, he suddenly found that the world in his eyes had changed. The change was vaster, and his vision was clearer, but there was a sense of protrusion. In his vision, there was a cliff, and he was standing on the edge of the cliff. Looking at the scenery, there were mountains in the distance, misty clouds, and the valley under the cliff was quiet. It was like a paradise on earth. He subconsciously wanted to move his limbs. However, he suddenly found that it was difficult for him to control his body. When he looked down, he saw a long trunk and 2 long tusks. F***CK. Han Fei was a little dumbfounded. Did he become an elephant? For some reason, Han Fei suddenly felt that there were some strange memories in his mind. It was a kind of swallowing technique. Huh. Han Fei heard a sound coming from behind. Han Fei quickly turned his body and looked over. However, this body was not used to it, so it was not convenient at all. Therefore, when Han Fei turned his head, he found that a strange creature covered with scales was pouncing on him. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei subconsciously attacked out of instinct. As an elephant, Han Fei didn't know how he attacked. Anyway, he instinctively shook his trunk, and then he saw a void divine whip piercing through the sky, like a knife splitting the void, directly cracking the void. With one blow of his trunk, the monster was sent flying, rolling hundreds of meters on the ground, leaving a long ravine. So strong. Han Fei was a little stunned. Is an elephant so strong? Han Fei wanted to swallow, but a gust of wind was set off around him. A large amount of ethereal energy was sucked into his mouth. A wave of sound waves rippled in the void. Each ripple was equivalent to a layer of wind blades flying. At this time, Han Fei saw the creature opposite him clearly. It was a weird creature that looked like a snake but had a tortoise shell. Its head was not a snake at all, but an oval bun. At first glance, Han Fei knew it was a freak. The other party twisted its body and used its tortoise shell to resist the sound waves. Clang, clang, clang. The impact was continuous. However, The elephant's trumpet contained strange, infrasonic waves. In this world, it seemed to have some kind of magic power. A roar actually shook the void and twisted it. The serpent's tail exploded with a loud bang. Han Fei was shocked. This is F** King strong. After a short period of discomfort, Han Fei found that as an elephant, it was really F** King strong. However, less than 3 seconds later, Han Fei saw another 7 or 8 of those weird creatures crawling out of the forest. F** so many. Huh! Another wave of sound waves swept out. However, this time, the 7 or 8 strange creatures actually began to spin. A bulging shield appeared on the surface of their bodies, blocking his sound wave attack. Han Fei was anxious. Obviously, it was these creatures that forced the elephant to the edge of this cliff. Han Fei wanted to slap these creatures to death. However, as soon as he made a move, he saw Han Fei raise his feet. Those pillar-like feet turned into a 100-meter-big footprint in the void and stepped down from the sky. Even Han Fei himself was a little stunned. Is this possible? However, on the opposite side, a series of giant tortoiseshell shields appeared in mid-air, trying to resist. Rumble! The air exploded, and a gust of wind swept. Unbeknownst to him, a creature had already bitten his chest. Ouch! 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 Han Fei subconsciously shook his body, and the huge force directly shook the creature away. However, a large piece of flesh was bitten off. F** This is too much. Am I going to be bitten to death? He saw 7 or 8 creatures pouncing on him together. However, Han Fei only knew 3 tricks. He sniffed with his nose, shouted with his mouth, and stomped with his feet. But in such a close situation, he couldn't make a move. No, I can stab with my teeth. Han Fei immediately bumped into one of the creatures regardless of his own safety. No matter what he was now, he couldn't just wait to die, right? Gotcha! Puff! A white light drilled out of the ivory. 100 meters along the way, a white beam of light appeared. A tortoise shell was pierced by Han Fei, and a big hole was poked in its body. It was definitely going to die. However, after seeing Han Fei attack, those weird creatures all turned into fireballs, rolling in the void, and madly bumped into Han Fei. Bump into me? Are you F** King stupid? Who am I? I'm an elephant. My skin is thick and my flesh is rough. Can't I kill you? Han Fei suddenly turned into a crazy elephant, baring his 2 big white teeth and rampaging. Ouch, it hurts. I'm going to knock you to death. F** bite my ass. I'm going to sit you to death. Hey, bite my nose. I'm going to slap you to death. BM, after fighting for half a day, Han Fei was crippled. The 7 or 8 creatures on the opposite side were blown up by his crazy strength. Of course, the price was not small. One of his tusks was broken, his 2 big ears were torn off, and his body was dripping with blood. In some places, his bones could be seen. Han Fei wanted to curse. F** ouch, it hurts. Gotcha! Han Fei was taken aback. Huh, what's that sound? The next moment, the cliff broke, and a huge crack appeared on the ground. It was caused by the strong destructive power in the battle just now. F** If I'm not eaten, am I going to fall to death? The ground collapsed, and Han Fei fell down the cliff. Han Fei thought to himself, can't elephants fly? Just when he was about to try to see if he could tread on the air like an elephant, he saw a huge mouth stretching out from a cliff. Baji. Chapter 1081. Han Fei's last consciousness was that he was swallowed by this thing. At that time, Han Fei was a little stunned. I'm an elephant. How could I be eaten by a head so casually? How could I be so shameless? When the elephant that Han Fei possessed died, Han Fei's consciousness returned in an instant. Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and shivered all over. The feeling of being eaten really didn't feel good. Although it wasn't the first time he had been eaten, he still felt terrible every time. After regaining consciousness, Han Fei quickly looked around, only to see that Little Fatty and Little Gold were staring at him with their big eyes. Seeing that there was no danger, Han Fei noticed Little Fatty's expression. He couldn't help but wonder, why are you looking at me like this? Little Fatty stared at Han Fei for a long time, and seemed to confirm that Han Fei was Han Fei. So it said, "Just now, the energy fluctuations in your body were very strong, as if you had been fighting." Han Fei was stunned. How could they see through that? Wait a minute. Han Fei quickly looked at the ivory in his hand. However, the ivory had turned into powder and most of it had dissipated. Han Fei wondered, I was in the state of soul. So how did I attach myself to the elephant? This was not the point. When the elephant was fighting, why would there be abnormal energy fluctuations in his body? If someone attacked him after he possessed the elephant, would he wake up? Also, what was it that swallowed the elephant? To be honest, Han Fei hadn't noticed it yet. Of course, Han Fei knew the legend of the Bashi swallowing an elephant. But in this world, was it only a snake that could swallow an elephant? Obviously, it wasn't like that. At this time, Han Fei was a little puzzled. It was said that this was a visualization fossil, which could help him gain something or perceive something. He just focused on fighting and didn't seem to have any epiphany. Han Fei suddenly thought of something. It seemed that he did have some epiphany. He didn't have a nose, and he couldn't grow ivory by himself. As for the void hand, it was just a way to use energy and spiritual energy, which he had already learned long ago. Then all that was left was the elephant's roar. Han Fei closed his eyes and looked back. He found that when the elephant roared, there seemed to be two kinds of power. One was the rippling wave of wind blades. The other was a strange sound wave that seemed to have the power to mess up the opponent's chi and blood. Han Fei suddenly got up. Roar! In front of Han Fei, the air trembled slightly, and a wind blade drifted out. As for the intensity, it was very, very weak, probably equivalent to the wind blade of a hanging fisher. As for the mysterious power of sound waves, there was none at all. No, the way you use your voice isn't right either. Roar, roar, he howled again and again. Finally, after the possession experience, Han Fei seemed to be able to spit out wind blades. Although the wind blades were not strong enough, Han Fei eventually adapted to them. This was equivalent to the strike of a peak-level hidden fisher. Han Fei was a little shocked. So simple. However, Han Fei couldn't really roar out continuous sound waves like an elephant. He could only roar out once. But in any case, this was also a kind of enlightenment. Although there was only one sound wave blade for each roar, it was still an additional skill for him, wasn't it? When Han Fei satisfactorily accepted this result, he saw that Little Gold was staring at him in a daze. And Little Fatty was looking at him as if he were an idiot. Little Fatty probably had a mental breakdown too. He didn't know what was wrong with this idiot's master. It's okay. He howled for a long time over there, which was the most unpleasant noise in the world. Han Fei tilted his head and looked at Little Fatty. Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Little Fatty hesitated for a long time and spat out two words. Unpleasant. Han Fei snorted and thought to himself, Little Fatty, you're just being insensitive. Do you know that I, your master, have just comprehended a new ability in a moment? Just by visualizing a single elephant tusk, he had gained an elephant's skill. Just when Han Fei was feeling a little complacent, he suddenly saw that the porcupine corpse not far away seemed to move. Huh? Han Fei's pupils constricted. What's the meaning of this? Isn't it a fossil? Little Fatty suddenly said, The smell of blood is getting heavier. It's because of your roar. Han Fei was lost for words. That can't be right. I almost stayed where I was and didn't move at all. Why do I have an ominous feeling? Don't tell me I've awakened it. But that shouldn't be the case. How can an inanimate object come back to life? Han Fei subconsciously clenched his fingers. Suddenly, he sensed that something was wrong. It seemed that some danger was coming. Han Fei didn't know what to say. I just shouted a few words, and I just practiced a small combat skill. How could I have affected a big shot? Exactly at this moment, Han Fei saw that the porcupine not far away moved again, as if it was struggling. Not just the porcupine, but even the corpse of the wolf that Han Fei dragged over earlier began to shiver slightly. A ball of blue fire appeared in its eyes, and it suddenly seemed to come to life. Damn it! Another corpse? Whenever a corpse had a blue fire in its eyes, it was most likely a corpse. Han Fei had no doubt about this. Many experiences and lessons had told Han Fei that this was a fact. Therefore, Han Fei didn't give the wolf corpse a chance to come back to life. He went up and punched it, causing its head to explode. When the head was gone, the wolf carcass would become a real corpse. Perhaps, after millions of years, this corpse would also become a visualization fossil. However, when Han Fei raised his head, he saw that the porcupine had already gotten up, with its back thorns hanging in the sky, staring at him leisurely. Cough! Why do I feel that this place is like a plain of animal bone pots? When he was in the undying soul realm, a large number of corpses fought. Well, now that he was in the prehistoric soul realm, he just turned into an animal. Swish! 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 More than 1,000 sharp arrows, shining with white light, pierced straight at Han Fei. However, Han Fei had already set up an array. Those sharp arrows were all intercepted outside the defense array. However, soon, the attack method of the sharp arrows changed, and they began to spin wildly. And the porcupine itself, as if launching a suicide charge, was digging the ground with 1 foot, as if it wanted to rush over. The movement of digging the ground with 1 foot was 2F*King professional. It was simply the signature movement of a porcupine. Boom! Han Fei blasted out a golden fist mark. Can I give you this chance? Do you think you're an elephant or a bull? You want to rush at me? However, at the moment when Han Fei blasted out the golden fist mark, the porcupine really rushed over. When it sprinted, layers of red light appeared on its body. His golden fist seal was actually destroyed by the porcupine's charge. Han Fei punched out again, and after 8 consecutive punches, he finally shattered the layer of red light and blasted the porcupine into pieces. Those spinning arrows also seemed to have fallen to the ground because of the death of their masters. Han Fei said disdainfully, "Although you are not weak, don't you know who I am? Moo! Oh, how?" As soon as Han Fei finished despising the porcupine, he immediately saw 2 big horns sticking out of the fog in the distance. Han Fei recognized those horns. Weren't those bull horns? Wait, an elephant head popped out, and a giant wolf popped out. Then, rhinoceroses, big cats, and creatures with tumor-like bodies emerged from the fog. Han Fei immediately felt that something was wrong. They just popped out of the fog and definitely didn't run over from a distance. Because if they were running over from afar, it was impossible for him not to hear them with his clairaudient ability. There would definitely be a lot of movement along the way. With so many creatures running wildly, the ground should have been boiling long ago. It was impossible for him not to feel it. Therefore, the only explanation was that these creatures simply popped out of the fog. Han Fei didn't feel good at all. I can deal with 1 or 2 creatures. A little more, a dozen or so, I might be able to deal with them. But now, oh my God, hundreds of beasts were galloping. Behind them, there seemed to be more creatures emerging from a mist. Was this reasonable? No matter how awesome he was, could he kill an army of alien beasts alone? Little Fatty glanced at Han Fei. "Aren't you going to run?" Han Fei scolded. "Run? Am I a fool? Why wouldn't I run?" Swish! Swish! Little Fatty and Little Gold were instantly taken back by Han Fei. Han Fei didn't want the big array he had just set up. It couldn't block the scene of tens of thousands of beasts galloping. Han Fei began to run wildly. There was fog everywhere, and he didn't know where the road was. He couldn't sense anything here, so he decided to run as fast as he could. Of course, before running, Han Fei was about to fly into the sky. If he could fly in the sky, these creatures could run however they wanted. However, as soon as he flew out dozens of meters, he was pressed to the ground by a terrifying force. Flying is forbidden here? Han Fei felt terrible. With the power of law, he couldn't fly anymore. This was definitely a death valley. Han Fei had no idea why he dug something up in the Death Valley. At this time, Han Fei also understood why it was said that no one who entered the Death Valley ever came out. How could he get out if he didn't know where the road was? Han Fei began to run as fast as he could, passing through the mist. And the big array he had just set up stopped all the ferocious beasts. But it didn't last long. The big array only lasted for about 10 minutes before it completely collapsed. However, Han Fei couldn't see it anymore. He sprinted through the fog. But as he ran, Han Fei found that there were a few more creatures around him. There were a few weird skeletal creatures like the shadow cheetah. Huh! Swish! So fast. Han Fei stretched out his hand and instantly used the draw technique. On the other side, the infinity water was thrown out and exploded. While running, Han Fei fought at the same time. However, there were always some creatures that were extremely fast. Fortunately, Han Fei could still use the phantom glass wings. Although he couldn't fly high, he could move fast. Otherwise, this kind of battle would inevitably delay his time. Han Fei ran wildly all the way, and the fear scene was really shocking. The ground was shaking violently, and all kinds of strange sound wave attacks kept coming from behind Han Fei. But fortunately, these were nothing. Han Fei's soul power was extremely powerful now, so he was not afraid of them. Seeing a shadow cheetah coming at him, Han Fei's figure flickered, and the void lines caught it. In the next moment, Han Fei jumped up and sat directly on its back. Huff! Comfortable. Han Fei twisted his neck, making a cracking sound. It's still comfortable to have a mount. Isn't it tiring to run by myself? Chapter 1082. In the stampede of 10,000 beasts, Han Fei also became one of them. At this moment, he was riding a shadow leopard, galloping all the way like a flash of light. Han Fei looked back from time to time, only to see that the creatures behind him were getting fiercer and fiercer, and their cries were getting louder and louder, as if there were really tens of thousands of different creatures roaring and shouting. Clatter! After running for a long time, Han Fei suddenly heard the sound of water splashing, as if tides were stacking and waves were slapping against the reef. He was so familiar with this sound that he couldn't have misheard it. Huh, how can there be the sound of waves in the mountains? Han Fei immediately had a bad feeling. This world was too complicated, and there were all kinds of strange things every day. He had long been used to all kinds of strange places. Go, go! The speed of this shadow leopard was not the fastest. However, Han Fei soon discovered that these creatures didn't seem to be just chasing him. It seemed that they just happened to be chasing him. It was as if he was coincidentally blocking their path of escape. It seemed that he was the victim, because at this moment, there were 7 or 8 creatures running abreast of Han Fei. Some of them even ran faster than the shadow leopard under Han Fei. Huh, why are they not coming to beat me? This answer was soon explained. Han Fei sprinted all the way. Suddenly, he heard a roar. When Han Fei looked back, he found that the colorful tiger he had seen before was also running crazily. Huh, is it the one just now? Han Fei wasn't sure if it was the one just now. After all, these colorful tigers all looked the same, and he was not their own kind, so he couldn't tell them apart at all. However, this Tiger King was very fast. With the tiger in the lead, no creatures dared to approach it. After a while, the colorful tiger was about to catch up with him. Han Fei finally found a huge shadow in the fog in front of him. The further he went, the better the visibility of the fog. When the fog began to thin, Han Fei saw the sea, the boundless sea. There were raging waves rolling ahead, and he could see real shrimp soldiers and crab generals fighting with human beings. However, these were not the key points. Moving a little closer, Han Fei's field of vision suddenly widened. Han Fei saw a super island that was so far away that he couldn't see the end of it. No, it was a gigantic ship that was stuck between the rocks on the land. In his eyes, he could only guess that it was a ship. That was because it was really too tall, like a giant city that fell from the sky. The hull of the ship was like a city wall, towering into the clouds. F***CK. Han Fei was dumbfounded. How big was this ship? How could this still be a boat? Compared to this behemoth in front of him, the so-called dragon boat in the level 3 fishery was equivalent to a mini boat, right? Han Fei's eyes almost popped out in surprise. And this ship was already moving. Except for a small part that Han Fei could see with his eyes, 99% of the hull was already in the sea. However, the sea was still too shallow to support the boat in the sea. It couldn't move at all. Therefore, Han Fei's eyes fell on the many figures around the hull that looked like super giants. Those giants, half of their bodies were in the sea, and their big hands looked like small mountains. Han Fei had always thought that there was no such thing as a five-finger mountain. But now he believed it. The 5 fingers were like mountains clasping the hull. Big hands were pushing the hull forward. Countless spirit formations were released from the gigantic super arc, and they were able to withstand the invasion of countless sea monsters. In the void, it had become a scene of earth-shattering battle. Which strong master was fighting? Han Fei didn't know. It was just that some people were fighting. Those people fought until the sky was dark and the earth was dark. The sun and the moon were dark. Boom! Huh! Suddenly, Han Fei felt the ground shake violently, and there seemed to be a heavy object falling behind him. When Han Fei turned his head, it was a giant ape more than 50 meters tall. Of course, it was very big in Han Fei's eyes, but compared to the opposite ship, the giant's hand, and the shocking battle scene, this ape was probably like a miniature man. And he might even be less than an ant, just a *king speck of dust. The ape carried a stick and roared angrily. Where are the beast race going? The roar almost made Han Fei's head explode. However, a new term appeared in his mind. Beasts. The super divine ship had been pushed into the deep sea. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He looked ahead and back. Were all the beasts galloping for that ship? Immediately, Han Fei swallowed. In the Age of Doom, some people led human beings across the sea on a peerless ship. However, these people seemed to have abandoned the other creatures on the land, the beasts. Han Fei immediately understood, but he was very puzzled. Which space was he in now? Which era? Which environment? Anyway, there was only one question. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? The big ape was very unwilling, and the fangs in its mouth were vaguely visible. In the roar, it smashed out with the stick, and like a cigar-shaped spaceship, it split the sea at an incredible speed. The shadow of the stick flew past, but the super wind and waves it set off directly blew the shadow leopard under Han Fei into pieces. And Han Fei himself wasn't any better. His body was like a rubber ball, rolling on the ground at high speed. If Han Fei hadn't been extremely sturdy and protected by the will of the god of war, he might have been blown to death by this gust. Wherever the stick passed, all the creatures were crushed. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals, the crab king's giant pincers, and the giant hand were all shattered. In the end, Han Fei saw a figure appear in the distant void, blocking the power of the stick with one hand. On the sea, a circular, incomparably huge wave was set off. Wherever the wave swept, all the creatures collapsed. Even though he was far away, the terrifying airwaves still slowed down Han Fei's running speed by more than 30%. A voice sounded in the void. The human race has 2 ways. Some seek a way to expand the sea, and some fight to the death. The beasts can't transcend the sea. I don't want to, but I can't. Go back. Huh. The ape roared angrily, jumped in the air, stretched out its stick, and roared. The beasts also need to be divided. As it spoke, the big ape went berserk. No one knew what kind of power it used, but a towering shadow as tall as 100 meters appeared between heaven and earth. The stick smashed straight at the divine boat. Han Fei cursed in his heart. Oh no, this monkey is crazy. Obviously, the human race didn't bring the beasts, and the beasts also wanted the human race to take away a batch of their descendants. Son of AB *TCH, it's none of my business. Why did you bring me here? In the sky, a strong master attacked. In an instant, a terrifying blast swept across the world. Han Fei's body was blown away and smashed directly into a mountain, vomiting a mouthful of blood. Was it a coincidence? Han Fei smashed into a mountain. It was a good place to hide from the outside world. After all, Han Fei didn't even know where he was now. However, for some reason, Han Fei was holding a bone in his hand, a particularly thick phalanx. Where did this bone come from? Han Fei didn't even have time to distinguish what kind of bone it was. Suddenly, his mind was attracted by the strange power contained in this bone. The next second, when Han Fei came back to his senses, he found that he was already standing on the battlefield outside. However, his field of vision was very high at this moment. Not far away, he saw the monkey that was fighting fiercely. Wait, I've become so tall. Han Fei looked down and found that he had become a monkey covered with fluff and holding a stick in his hand. However, relatively speaking, his body size was much worse than that of the ape in front of him. However, Han Fei was full of explosive power at this moment. This made Han Fei unable to stop. It was an extremely strong psychological consciousness. Han Fei felt that he had reached a power that he couldn't understand at all. It seemed that as long as he waved his fist, he could collapse the mountains and crack the earth and shake the sea and the sky. My son, fight. Today, we must fight for a way to survive for the beasts. Han Fei was stunned. The big ape in front of him glanced at him fiercely. F***CK. You're calling me? I'm not your son. I'm F***King panicking now. Han Fei only hesitated for a moment, and a huge, colorful tiger roared at him. Then, Han Fei understood what it meant. The colorful tiger said, "Kill. Today, turn the world upside down." The surging beast tide was pushing Han Fei forward. Han Fei thought to himself, whatever. Anyway, this was all imagined by the ideal palace. Let's fight. Anyway, he didn't have a good impression of this group of humans who ran away. Besides, his mother should have been a stickler back then. In the end, they conquered hundreds of millions of territories and created the 36 immortal palaces. No matter what, he should stand on the stickler side. Besides, let the beast go extinct. It didn't seem too good. After all, there were countless kinds of creatures. If they were still alive now, they might be able to make this world a little more colorful. Third update. Asking for votes. I'm outside, asking for monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1083. At this point, what could Han Fei do? Of course, he had to fight. His body was probably in the belly of the mountain now. Even if the mountain collapsed, he wouldn't be crushed to death. However, he had to fight far away and couldn't let it affect this place. Han Fei, who had transformed into a monkey, stepped on the mountain, and a coiled turtle array was imprinted on the mountain. When Han Fei stepped out of the coiled turtle array with the body of an ape, the scene was shocking. An old turtle was lying on the ground. Its shadow was vicissitude, as if it were an old monster that had lived for tens of thousands of years. Han Fei roared and rushed forward. Every step he took on the ground caused the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. The big ape seemed to be surprised. How could its son use the means of a human spirit gatherer? However, it didn't care and was already fighting on the sea. However, at this moment, the sea had already collapsed. Ferocious beasts, human beings, and the Sea Clan, the three parties fought together, and the ground was covered with corpses. Han Fei didn't know if it was because he had become a very strong monkey, but he felt that he was about to explode now. As he jumped, his body directly leaped hundreds of meters into the sky. Han Fei was proficient in rod techniques. After all, he had studied the true solution of rod techniques. However, when Han Fei thought of the true solution of rod techniques, he suddenly felt that those were not the strongest. What made Han Fei realize that the strongest was actually strength, infinite strength, and the power of law that could penetrate through the void. Somehow, there seemed to be a mysterious understanding of rod techniques falling on Han Fei. When Han Fei jumped to the sea, the first thing that came at him was a big lobster. Just the giant pincers broke through the void of 100 meters. Attack! The long rod in Han Fei's hand smashed the void. Before the rod arrived, the waves were separated, the clouds rose, and the flames all enveloped the rod. At this moment, Han Fei couldn't tell how strong he was at all. At present, what he could understand was the power of a wave. However, obviously, the power of this big ape had probably surpassed 100 waves. Han Fei firmly believed that the monkey he was possessing now definitely had the strength of an explorer. Moreover, they might not be ordinary explorers. That sturdy body, that explosive power. In the air, the two pincers were unable to resist at all. They tumbled down and were crushed from head to tail. Clang! Kacha! Bang! The huge lobster's head was smashed into pieces by Han Fei's rod. F***CK, so awesome. Even Han Fei himself was shocked. One could tell that the lobster was extraordinary. It was covered in incomparably thick armor. In the end, it was smashed by his rod? That's not right. There's an armor-breaking, profound, opening power on the rod. Even Han Fei himself didn't realize that the blow he made with all his strength was so powerful. What staff technique quintessence? Han Fei had long forgotten about it. This thing was simply too awesome. This was the pinnacle of power that he had felt so far. It was so strong that it made his scalp go numb. Moreover, this strike did not end immediately. Wherever the cudgel wave passed, dozens of prawn soldiers and crab generals were crushed. My son board the ship. Han Fei bared his teeth. What do you mean by my son? If old Han hears this, he'll beat the *T out of you. However, he couldn't expose his identity yet. After all, this big ape was too strong. If it knew that he was not his son, he would be doomed. Han Fei stomped his feet and immediately wanted to jump onto the towering ship. However, as soon as Han Fei jumped into the air, a strong master arrived with an armor. This was an armorist who was full of muscles. In a human base, only such a powerful armorist could stop creatures like the big ape. The other multicolored tiger spread its wings and flew into the sky, but it was also stopped by someone. In any case, the powerful beasts were all stopped. The man in front of Han Fei, with his armor box suspended in the air and 2 sledgehammers in his hands, looked at Han Fei solemnly. Retreat. This ship is full. The beasts have boarded the ship in other places. The beasts can't be destroyed. Han Fei thought for a moment. Since he was here to fight, he had to fight first, right? If he couldn't beat them, he wouldn't have to get involved in this matter. So Han Fei didn't say a word and smashed down with his cudgel. Clang! The first to appear was a giant turtle with strange patterns on its body. It seemed to be the spiritual beast of the armorist. The turtle's eyes emitted a strange light, causing the void to shake, so that Han Fei's cudgel couldn't smash down. At the same time, the void was torn, and cold lights swept to Han Fei's body, making clanging sounds. Han Fei's fur was cut a little. Maybe because he wasn't used to the ape's fighting style, Han Fei lost the upper hand in the first round. However, what shocked him was that this monkey's physique was ridiculously strong. The void had been torn apart, but the cudgel had only cut the fur on its body. Didn't this mean that this monkey could fight against an explorer-level strong master? The armorer's face became more and more gloomy. At this moment, with a roar, a divine weapon exploded in front of Han Fei. For an expert of this level to make a divine weapon explode, how terrifying would that be? Han Fei was blasted thousands of meters away and crashed into the sea, flattening a big centipede. Han Fei was also enraged. Such a strong body, but this was all he could do? Of course, that was impossible. In his mind, thousands of cudgel shadows suddenly appeared. Did he feel the instinctive fierceness of a monkey? Han Fei's eyes turned red, and he stepped into the air again. But this time, he smashed hundreds of cudgel shadows at once. Even he didn't know what kind of cudgel technique it was. Anyway, he just smashed whatever appeared in his mind. Clang, 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 where the turtle's eye was condensed. The void shook as if it was sinking into sand, but Han Fei didn't care. If one cudgel couldn't smash through, he would smash it 10 times. If 10 cudgel couldn't smash through, he would smash it 100 times. Perhaps because Han Fei's moves were too fast from the perspective of others, Han Fei seemed to be waving a fire stick, smashing it again and again. The more Han Fei smashed, the more excited he felt. This cudgel technique was so strange. Each cudgel was faster and stronger than the previous one, very similar to Zhang Xuanyu's 9-layered waves in Furious Sea. However, the waves he could create were countless times more than Zhang Xuanyu's. The big turtle was smashed by Han Fei so hard that even its head shrank back, and cracks appeared on its shell. And the armorist turned into a giant and tried to resist with his giant hammer. However, after Han Fei smashed it more than 500 times, the armorist finally couldn't stand it anymore. The giant phantom was directly smashed by Han Fei. His bones were broken, blood gushed out wildly, and he was sent flying backward. Only then did Han Fei have a chance to rush to the ship. To rush to the ship, he had to break through the array first. However, before Han Fei broke through the array, he suddenly heard a thunderous roar above the sky. Someone shouted, "Enough, monkey! The road ahead is long, and life and death are uncertain. If the human race survives, the beast will definitely rise in the future. Huh! The big ape refused and shouted angrily. If we die, how can we rise? Let the beasts board the ship. Humph! It seemed that the negotiation didn't work out, and then Han Fei saw a scene that he would never forget in this life. He saw a big hand across the sky, covering half of the sky, and the palm print was like a mountain falling from the sky. The big ape was covered in blood, his hands against the big hand, still trying to struggle. However, it was pressed to the bottom by the big hand. Even Han Fei, the Tiger King, and a one-horned rhinoceros were pressed down by this big hand. F***CK. Han Fei thought, I haven't had fun for 2 minutes yet. I was pressed down as soon as I hit one person. In fact, there seemed to be boundless gravity above the big hand. Several Beast King-level powerhouses were all pressed into the sea. There's a saying called overwhelming mountains and overturning seas. In the past, Han Fei thought it was a bit exaggerated. But now it seemed that overwhelming mountains and overturning seas was nothing. As soon as this big hand came out, even a complete mountain range could be smashed by him. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, Han Fei didn't know what he was feeling. He felt like he was a little kid. Then he was stunned by a slap. When Han Fei came back to his senses, his whole body sank into the depths of the sea sand, and all his bones seemed to have been crushed. Just now, he had arrogantly defeated an explorer. At this moment, he was like a seriously ill patient groaning in a hospital bed, about to die at any time. Han Fei finally came to a conclusion. Creatures like the strong were too terrifying. When he hit people just now, he was like old Han. Now he was pressed down by someone, and he felt that that person was old Han. This kind of subtle psychological experience made Han Fei feel uncomfortable. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Am I going to die? Han Fei felt that he really couldn't make it. He was obviously not as strong as the big ape. And that person's power was originally used to deal with the big ape. But now, Han Fei felt that he couldn't move. Countless giant worms from the bottom of the sea rushed towards the wound, trying to drill into his body. Han Fei waited for a long time before he accumulated a little strength and directly killed all these creatures. When Han Fei crawled back to the shore with his level 9 crippled body, he saw that the big ape was also dying, sprawled on the ground after being slapped to the ground. Pressed into the ground, it probably wasn't any better than Han Fei. All of a sudden, Han Fei sensed a fatal crisis. He tried to dodge, but he only had time to make a movement to escape. Poochie! A silver spear directly pierced through his body. Together with the spear, he slid on the ground for thousands of meters and smashed half of a mountain before he finally stopped. Gravel rolled down and pressed on Han Fei's body. Bam! The silver spear exploded. Han Fei, who was about to die, was blown up to the point that half of his body was gone, leaving only a trace of breath. At that moment, Han Fei completely experienced the arrival of death. Han Fei had experienced the smell of death before. For example, he died too quickly with Chun Huangdian and didn't feel anything. For example, when he killed Snowmorn, he still had a bit of confidence. But this time, he didn't know how long it had been. It seemed very long, but it also seemed very short. Han Fei muttered to himself, I haven't even shown my power yet, and I'm already dead? When Han Fei was dying, he felt that his soul was about to be shed. Suddenly, a big hand pushed away the gravel. Half of the big ape's body crawled out of the pit and took a deep look at Han Fei. There was no telling whether he was talking to his son or Han Fei, but he struggled to say, If the beasts don't perish. Yes, the beast will be better. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1084. Han Fei didn't know when he woke up. Anyway, he felt very tired, very tired. He didn't even see the void steel appear. Han Fei's bones seemed to have fallen apart. At this moment, in a daze, Han Fei didn't know how many divine healing techniques he had cast on himself. Only then did he slowly wake up. When Han Fei woke up, he found that he was pressed in the gravel. A boulder was pressing on his face, almost crushing him into a pancake. Bam! Han Fei struggled and blasted away out of the gravel. When he climbed out, he found that the scene just now had disappeared without a trace. However, not far in front of him, he saw hundreds of various creatures. There were wolves, pigs, crocodiles, shadow leopards. Anyway, there were a lot of creatures, but these creatures were different from those on the previous battlefield. The bodies of these creatures had long collapsed and were incomplete. At this moment, their eyes were flashing with blue soul fire, and they were trying to kill Han Fei. Wait, why is the timeline here so chaotic? Han Fei tried to calm himself down. From the moment he dug into the hole and came out, the timeline had changed. When he visualized the elephant's tusk, Han Fei returned to the time when the elephant died in a certain way. The time when he possessed the elephant and the time when he came out of the hole and saw the wolf's corpse should not be in the same timeline. But after he visualized the elephant's tusk, he was chased, so something unknown should have happened. Thus, he was brought into another timeline. If possessing the elephant was a timeline, killing the wolf was another timeline, and being chased was another timeline, then this time should be the same timeline as when he killed the wolf. However, these were not his original timeline. Immediately, Han Fei understood it. In this fog, time was chaotic, but the key now was, how should he return to the normal timeline? However, at this moment, there was no time for Han Fei to think about it, because these creatures were about to pounce on him. Roar! As a wolf roared, Han Fei grabbed the embroidery needle with one hand. Why am I grabbing the embroidery needle? Han Fei was unconscious. He was ready to fight, so he naturally grabbed a weapon. However, his first reaction just now was to grab the embroidery needle instead of the blood-drinking knife, which was a little strange. But at this moment, Han Fei didn't care so much. Fight then. Seeing the wolf's sudden attack, Han Fei roared and swung the embroidery needle up. When the embroidery needle was raised, Han Fei felt something different. He seemed to be very good at using sticks. In his mind, a nameless staff technique flashed through his mind. The great ape's staff technique. The shadow of the cudgel was like a pillar of fire, striking hundreds and thousands of times in the blink of an eye. Clang, 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 Han Fei wielded the rod violently. At this time, in Han Fei's mind, the memory became clearer and clearer, and he inexplicably felt that the 3,000 stacked mountains could shake the world. Half an hour later, Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself with the embroidery needle covered in wounds. Han Fei murmured, "What a powerful rod technique." To be precise, it was probably 3,000 layered waves. However, it seemed like he could only unleash 100 overlapping waves. Then, he couldn't continue to improve it. Interesting. Is this the terrifying power of the visualization fossil? Han Fei sighed. No wonder the visualization fossil is the most valuable. From the beginning to the end, he felt that it was inexplicable. This 3,000 overlapping waves was really powerful. This would probably raise his level of staff techniques from bronze to master. However, there was still a long way to go before he could be promoted to the king level. Fine, although I don't quite understand, I've inherited your rod technique. If I have a chance to meet the beasts in the future, I'll treat them better. At this moment, Han Fei glanced at the imaginary embroidery needle in his hand and couldn't help but focus. Let's call it the Monkey King 3,000 rod technique. Han Fei sighed faintly. That ape was truly ferocious. If it weren't for that big hand, it might really be able to hit it. Of course, at this moment, Han Fei had no time to think about it. If there was no accident, he was still in the Death Valley. It was very likely that this place had once been a battlefield. The number of beasts that died here was uncountable. Could it be that he really had to break through this place in order to get out? What a joke. Han Fei still remembered that there seemed to be a one-horned rhinoceros among the beasts that charged together with him. Don't let me encounter it. Otherwise, someone of that level would have beaten him to death. Han Fei rested for a while, carried the rod, and began to walk in the Death Valley. Along the way, Han Fei could always meet all kinds of land creatures. Some would get up and attack him. Some would have hatred in their eyes. Some wouldn't because they really only had remains of their bodies left. Fortunately, Han Fei didn't encounter any particularly powerful creatures that could resurrect. Han Fei walked from the Death Valley into a dense jungle. The moment he saw the jungle, Han Fei felt very familiar. He felt that this should mean that he had already left the Death Valley. After running wildly in the forest for a while, the remains of the beasts were gone. There didn't seem to be any special creatures guarding around. About half an hour later, Han Fei suddenly discovered that he seemed to have come to a cliff. It looks a bit familiar. Han Fei was surprised to find that this was the cliff that he had come to when he possessed the elephant. So he walked and walked and walked and walked, and then he came here. Han Fei still remembered that there seemed to be a big head at the bottom of this cliff between the cliffs. He didn't know what kind of head that thing was. It could swallow an elephant in one bite. However, what Han Fei thought of more was the deformed creature that carried a turtle shell, a snake body, and a bun head. After listening carefully for a while, Han Fei didn't find any movement, so he slowly breathed a sigh of relief. He was not an elephant, and those creatures didn't seem to be weak. He'd better not encounter them if he could avoid them. Squeak! Just when Han Fei thought it was okay, he suddenly heard squeaking sounds, which made his heart skip a beat. Little monkey? Han Fei quickly looked in the direction of the sound, only to see that on the cliff far away, a little monkey was eating bananas and hanging upside down on a tree vine. Han Fei was shocked. Is this little monkey the little monkey I just met? Although this little monkey seemed to be quite bad, it didn't seem to like fighting. Although the path was dangerous, even if he met the Tiger King again, so what? If he could meet the Tiger King, it meant that he had already left the Death Valley. Immediately, Han Fei spread the phantom glass wings and flew directly to the opposite side. In this place, it was not really flying, but just flopping. However, in short, it was much better than walking. Han Fei didn't want to jump over. What if another head popped out halfway and ate him? Wouldn't that be the end of him? When the little monkey saw Han Fei coming, he immediately threw the banana away in a panic, pulled a vine on the cliff, and jumped down the cliff. Monkey, don't run. We are relatives. Han Fei plunged headfirst into the clouds and chased after the little monkey. However, although the monkey didn't like fighting, it ran really fast, as if this was its back garden. This cliff was about 7 or 8 kilometers high. Han Fei chased and chased, only to find that the little monkey had disappeared at some point. Han Fei landed at the bottom of the valley, and his heart suddenly sank. This was still the Death Valley. Yes, he saw a large number of monkey corpses, like mummies. However, many monkeys were crawling on the ground. Some of them even died while they were sitting upright. There's also a group of monkeys, arm in arm, standing in a circle, motionless. No one knew how long they had been dead. Han Fei swallowed and couldn't help but tentatively say, "Brother Monkey, look at me. I just fought side by side with your ancestor. I look like a good person. Can you send me out?" However, there was no sound. The little monkey seemed to have disappeared. Han Fei could only bite the bullet and walk forward along the bottom of the valley. Fortunately, these monkeys didn't intend to resurrect, which made Han Fei feel a lot relieved. But the more he walked, the more Han Fei felt something was wrong, because everything here was more like a place suitable for living. There were even stone tables here. There were monkeys playing pitch-pot games, and even some wine jars. Han Fei specially ran to the wine jars to see if there was any wine in them. Didn't they say that there was some monkey wine to strengthen the body? What if there were some rare treasures here? Unfortunately, the jar was empty. Thinking about it, it might be true. This was just a soul realm. Although this place might really exist, it was definitely not in the ideal palace. The ideal palace was just an island. How could it accommodate the 7 soul realms? Therefore, this should be a projection of a certain place existing in the form of a soul space. After walking for a while, Han Fei suddenly saw a place that looked like a throne. In fact, it was a huge stone chair. There were rock roads around it, and various lines were carved on the ground. On the side of the stone chair, Han Fei could vaguely see the cliff wall. There seemed to be a pattern there. When Han Fei walked there, he found that the figure of a big ape was carved on the cliff wall. There were all kinds of stick figures on it. Wow, there must be treasures under the cliff. Trick, I admire you. Han Fei had discovered that the stick technique was the set of Monkey King 3,000 strikes that he had learned. However, he didn't want to learn stick techniques now, but to find a way out. Han Fei stood in front of the cliff and looked at it for a while. Suddenly, he found that the little monkey was sitting not far from him. However, at this moment, the little monkey had a stick in its hand and was looking at him. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Monkey, if you're so disgraceful, why are you carrying a stick?" Squeak! The little monkey's body suddenly swelled, and its body mutated into an ape the size of 2 people. Son of a B asterisk TCH, I knew it wouldn't be so easy to get out. Chapter 1085. Unlike Han Fei, although Luo Xiaobai and the others had also dug out problems, they hadn't come to the Death Valley yet. Zhang Xuanyu even stopped digging, and when he came back, he found that Han Fei and the others were gone. He was dumbfounded. "I just ran next door for a while. Where are they?" Curious, Zhang Xuanyu found the hole dug by Han Fei and ran in. As a result, as soon as he walked out, oh my god, the hole behind him was also gone. As a result, all 5 of them, including Zhang Xuanyu, had dug themselves out. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai was tossing and turning on a big tree, surrounded by hundreds of spiritual plants, facing the danger from the tree. Yes, unlike Han Fei, Luo Xiaobai found herself on a tree after coming out. This tree was so big that Luo Xiaobai felt that she was lost. Besides, she had lost the ability to walk through spiritual plants. Fortunately, the death substitution technique could still be used. Otherwise, Luo Xiaobai felt that she would be in trouble. However, Luo Xiaobai's thinking was clearer than Han Fei's. At this moment, she was guarding the end of a huge branch, frowning. Is it a coincidence that such a huge spiritual plant is here? Luo Xiaobai generally didn't believe in coincidences. She was a manipulator and happened to come to a huge spiritual plant. And on this big tree, on the surface of the bark, there were all kinds of spiritual plants. Also, there were many flying birds living in the sky, as well as a large number of insects and snakes. The reason why Luo Xiaobai felt that she had a slim chance of survival was that these birds were too terrifying. Insects were nothing to her. She was a manipulator, and a very strong one at that. Although snakes were a bit tricky to fight, she had many means of attack. Even if she didn't have a strong fighting style like Han Fei and the others, spiritual plants were weapons. In a world of spiritual plants, she had no reason to lose to the creatures living on spiritual plants. However, birds were different. He had very little experience fighting bird-type creatures. At this moment, what was chasing Luo Xiaobai was a kind of flying creature. Luo Xiaobai felt that they were birds. These creatures had a pair of transparent wings, fluff on their bodies, a steel needle in their mouth, and a tail that was split into 3. If Han Fei were here, he would have been shocked. Damn it, do all the mosquitoes in this world look like this? Of course, it couldn't be a mosquito, but it looked like one. It looked like a bee, except that it had a needle on its mouth. The 3 tails were like whips that could pierce through the void. Most of the spiritual plants summoned by Luo Xiaobai's grand spirit summoning art were sucked dry by the 3 tails. This made her speechless. But fortunately, Luo Xiaobai did gain something. She visualized the claws of a terrifying spider. At this moment, as his figure moved, thousands of threads and tens of thousands of movements could be seen. In the void, it only appeared faintly before turning into nothingness. However, those mosquito-like fellows couldn't see it. Therefore, when a large group of mosquitoes chased after them, many of them were shredded by the threads hidden in the void. Vine explosion. Luo Xiaobai stepped on vines and jumped among the branches with invisible threads as hooks. She wanted to reach the top, although there seemed to be some other creatures there. Luren Kuang came to an orchard. Logically speaking, this should be something to be happy about. However, what if these fruits grew bigger than humans? What if these fruits could attack people? What if there were bugs bigger than humans here? Roar! Luren Kuang was also running wildly, thinking that a group of fruits was following him. Those fruits actually opened their big mouths, full of steel teeth, and there was mucus between their teeth. In prehistoric times, there might not only be beasts, but also strange trees. There might also be some things that people didn't understand at all. At this moment, Lu Rinquang and the group of fruits chasing him behind him were like a game of Pac-Man, funny and strange. The armor box and the blade storm came out in full force, attacking in all directions. Because not only were there fruits chasing behind him, but there might also be some strange roots like man-eating flowers sticking out of his head. There was also the fruit that could shoot poisonous thorns. If it was just fruits, they might not be very strong. At most, their characteristics were a little abnormal. However, there were all kinds of strange things in the boundless world. This was not strange, but the bugs here were not so easy to deal with. The human-faced half-winged beetles often lay on some spiritual plants and cast illusions. If it weren't for the fact that Lu Rinquang's soul had become stronger after the monster plant soul realm and the blue sea soul realm, and he had things like mint leaves, he would have been bewitched by them. Moreover, those bugs could even scream, which pierced his soul, making Lu Rinquang extremely annoyed. Otherwise, why would Lu Rinquang and the bugs always have some unspeakable opportunities? Here, the most terrifying thing was not those illusionary bugs. The main thing was that there were a lot of mantises here. If Lu Rinquang didn't activate ultimate defense, he might have been chopped by them. It's too dangerous, too dangerous. I want to go home. And just when Lu Rinquang thought that he had run out of the orchard and reached the mountain peaks ahead, he saw a group of broken corpses looking at him leisurely. Lu Rinquang recognized those corpses. Weren't those giants? He had seen them on the murals in the 1,000-star proving ground. Oh my God! One of the giants had lost half of its head. There was also a giant with holes all over his body. At this moment, he seemed to be about to attack. Roar! Deep blue roar. Zhang Xuanyu's situation was not much better. He came to a spider jungle full of spider webs. In the sea, there are also sea spiders, and there are many of them. However, those spiders rarely appeared at the same time, let alone several or dozens of them at once. If you insisted that spiders were similar to crabs, you had to be careless. At least crabs were edible, but few people ate spiders. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu was facing a group of huntsman spiders. These spiders were generally larger, with longer and sharper feet. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu was not only facing the danger of spider silk, but also the endless, sharp, spear-like spider feet. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. Soul explosion. Zhang Xuanyu had already moved like a phantom, and the long rod in his hand struck out layers of waves. As a fishing master who dared to cross the sea, Zhang Xuanyu was quite bold. To some extent, he was even comparable to Han Fei. In terms of combat experience, Zhang Xuanyu was the best except for Han Fei, but he was good at one-on-one battles, not group battles. When a large number of spider feet plunged down, accompanied by spider silk and venom, Zhang Xuanyu was in a difficult situation. He fused with the bloodthirsty shark to draw the enemy's blood. He pierced with the power of his soul to protect himself. He used the Trinity body as bait to divert the spider's attack. Zhang Xuanyu tried his best to escape from this damn place first. Covered with wounds, Zhang Xuanyu had just escaped from the tiger's mouth, only to enter the wolf's den again. A giant spider was giving birth. A large group of small spiders chased him, making his scalp go numb. He didn't dare to think about what he would do if they caught up with him. Among all of them, only Li Luo's situation was the most normal. Li Luo also appeared in a forest. However, that was just a normal spirit plant forest. What appeared were some creatures that he had never seen before, but were still normal. Li Luo was still humming a tune because along the way, countless creatures had been made into plant specimens by her. There is something wrong with the timeline here. How do I get out? In the absence of Han Fei and the others, Li Luo's body swelled and turned into a nine-eyed spider. If Han Fei and the others were here, they would have been shocked. The nine-eyed spider was crawling quickly in the forest, thousands of insects following him, like a mighty army of insects. Many creatures even chose to escape when they saw her. Only the corpses of those creatures that had lost consciousness would still rush up in groups. Everyone's encounters were different. The prehistoric world was only a corner of it, and it was impossible to see the whole picture. At this moment, Han Fei didn't know how long he had been fighting with the little monkey. Anyway, he had fought it more than 200 times. He tried to use the void lines, but this ape had the power to protect its soul, and the void lines couldn't catch it. And what made Han Fei most speechless was that this ape's physique was unexpectedly not weaker than his. Han Fei was appalled by this. I admit that I'm no match for the big ape. After all, I'm stronger than him. However, a little monkey that had transformed into an ape had a physique that was so strong that it was able to exchange punches with him. This shocked Han Fei. Of course, in terms of footwork and saber techniques, the little monkey was at a disadvantage. However, while others used sticks, this little monkey could also use the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. And its control was much better than Han Fei's. After 100 strikes, Han Fei found that it was quite difficult to increase the power and speed of each strike. However, this little monkey was able to unleash 300 shadows of the rod. Han Fei didn't know how many times he had been blasted away. Besides, this little monkey had the intention to kill him. Han Fei could clearly feel it. If he was beaten to death, he might really be dead. Of course, with Han Fei's physique, it was extremely difficult for the little ape to kill him. Han Fei was like an indestructible cockroach. Not only did his combat power not decrease at all, but even his stick techniques were slowly improving. It's really a place for training. There were many timelines in the prehistoric Soul Realm. However, Han Fei felt that he had discovered something here. This place had been destroyed in prehistoric times. However, the prehistoric creatures were not willing to give up. Just like the big ape said that Han Fei should treat the orcs, besides, Han Fei thought that he had discovered the secret of this soul realm. That was the fall of the orcs and the complicated relationship between them and human beings. Han Fei felt that perhaps in the future, the orcs might be a race that he could make friends with. Chapter 1086. The horror of the Death Valley was not that it was really dangerous, but that it was very difficult for those who came in to get out. Whether it was possessing an elephant or an ape, it was just an experience in the end. The chaotic timeline brought people's souls into a certain mysterious time node, or in a fantasy that seemed very real. However, rules couldn't be meaningless. The reason why it wanted people to comprehend something or other must be because of some reason. According to the usual routine of the ideal palace, whether it was the Monster Plant Soul Realm, the Undead Soul Realm, or the Blue Sea Soul Realm, they all had extremely fast and terrifying experience for people. At least, if there was no problem with their talent, as long as they didn't die, these people would inevitably grow rapidly. Even if they couldn't reach the end of each soul realm, the chances of humans cultivated in this way to become strong were greatly increased. It was the same in this prehistoric soul realm. Although he hadn't visualized many visualization fossils yet, the ones he felt were almost the strongest. Even if there were better visualization fossils in this prehistoric soul realm, there probably wouldn't be many. At this moment, Han Fei had been fighting with this ape for 3 days and fought countless times. In terms of combat strength, Han Fei and this monkey were evenly matched. In terms of means, Han Fei had more tricks. The problem was that every time Han Fei used fancy means, the opposite ape would go crazy and its strength would increase a lot. As a result, Han Fei could only fight with this stick with the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. Of course, there were times when they didn't fight. For example, now Han Fei used the Monkey King 3,000 strikes and condensed arrays on the stick. Finally, he beat the monkey away for the first time. This time he won. Han Fei sat on the ground and gasped. "Monkey, I know you want to help me practice stick techniques, but can you not always think of killing me? If it were someone else, they would have been beaten to death by you." Hiss, hiss, the ape didn't seem to understand what Han Fei was saying. It bared its teeth and looked fierce. However, it didn't immediately attack again. Instead, it stretched out its hand, grabbed a banana, and began to peel it and eat it. Han Fei sneered, grabbed a jar of wine from the void, and drank a few mouthfuls. Normally, Han Fei would definitely catch some food, but recently, after fighting, he really wanted a drink. The monkey bared its teeth and actually grabbed a wine jar from the void and started to gulp down the wine. Thus, the man and the monkey sat opposite each other, 1,000 meters apart, drinking their own wine. When he finished a jar of wine, the monkey suddenly stood up. Han Fei thought they were going to fight again. However, the monkey started to hit its own chest with its fists. Huh, so what if your chest muscles are big? Han Fei raised his rod and was ready to fight again, but surprisingly, the monkey didn't attack him, which made Han Fei quite curious. You're not fighting anymore? Then, Han Fei saw the monkey dance with joy. Slowly, there was a slight change in the air, and a blurry figure of a giant ape slowly appeared. Han Fei knew the ape. Didn't that look like a big ape? The illusion dissipated upon contact. A ball of fire appeared in the eyes of the monkey and spread outwards. The monkey's body seemed to be unable to bear this wisp of illusion. At this moment, its whole body was trembling, and its skin began to crack. A heavy, hoarse, and deep voice came out. No one knew if it was talking to Han Fei. The Beast King, the day of return, the time of horror, the East, the sea shall not cross, BAM. After saying this, in Han Fei's astonished gaze, the monkey suddenly exploded. The void steel emerged, and Han Fei's name was directly branded at the 23rd place. Han Fei wasn't surprised by this ranking. Although the experience this time was extremely bizarre, there weren't that many real battles. The disordered timeline wouldn't obliterate the souls of outsiders. The main dangers Han Fei faced were the corpses of the Death Valley itself, and the little monkey who seemed to be an examiner. Han Fei frowned. The day of Beast King's return, the time of horror, the East is literally what it means. The sea shall not cross. Can't you just say it all at once? Han Fei murmured and thought for a moment. What level is the Beast King? The last sentence was that there was something in the East, or was it referring to something else? Han Fei's brain was spinning fast. If the big ape knew something, why didn't it say it when the timeline was disordered? Or, in fact, when the little ape he possessed died, something else happened that he didn't know? Unfortunately, the information he knew was too little. The only thing he could do was to remember this information. The Beast King's return would bring great horror. When Han Fei came back to his senses, he suddenly found that he was standing in the misty valley, and there was no cliff. I'm out. In another timeline, Luo Xiaobai was half paralyzed on the ground, covered in blood. In front of her, a creature with a goat's head, a human body, and a pair of wings was nailed to the top of a giant tree by 9 branches. All below the king are ants. All living beings are sacrifices. No one can escape. Above the giant tree, in the void, there seemed to be an ethereal voice, constantly repeating this sentence. In Luren Kuang's timeline, this guy had already gone crazy. Its whole body was crimson, and even its hair color had turned fiery red. In front of him, there was only emptiness and nothingness. The sky-swallowing technique was frantically tearing the nothingness as if it was eating something. Around Luren Kuang, there were many remains of giants, but they seemed to have been dead for a long time. A demonic voice echoed. In the 100,000 years behind me, I'm afraid no one dares to kill a god. Ha ha ha. The laughter was sharp, horrifying, and crazy. Compared with the 3 of them, Zhang Xuanyu's experience was different from others and extremely special. After Zhang Xuanyu escaped from the territory of the spiders, he happened to find a human skeleton. At this moment, he was in a disordered timeline, possessing an unknown person. That person stood proudly in the void, and the spear in his hand shot out again and again, piercing the sky. Every time he attacked, a dark hole would always be pierced in the sky, as if he had poked a big hole in the sky. Mortals can also open the gate of heaven. My fate is in my own hands. This sentence kept appearing in Zhang Xuanyu's mind. The possessed person seemed to know that this path was his path and his ultimate will. Li Luo was sitting on the edge of the cliff. Under the cliff, the waves were crashing, and there was an endless sea in front of her. Li Luo was sitting alone, staring into the distance, with her hands on the ground, like a lonely little girl. Li Luo's eyes were a little lonely. There was no fancy color on her face, and she looked like a quite quiet little girl. She said to herself, "It turns out that they are all dead, but I can't remember when I go out. What do you think I should do?" Kiki. Lilua's expression changed, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing 2 small dimples. "I remember." Han Fei didn't know whether he should continue to walk deeper into the mountain range. He returned to the valley where the time was disordered at the beginning, and the hole he dug was still there. However, Luo Xiaobai and the others were no longer there. He wondered if they were the same as him. He fell into an inexplicable time turbulence. He waited for a day and a night. The first to come out was Luo Xiaobai. However, she was in an extremely bad state. She was covered with bruises and looked extremely weak. Han Fei hurriedly asked, "What happened?" As he spoke, he threw the divine healing technique at Luo Xiaobai. Han Fei also took out a soul fruit and gave it to Luo Xiaobai. Luo Xiaobai was relieved to see Han Fei. Well, there's something wrong with the time. Luo Xiaobai didn't hide what she saw. When Han Fei heard the sentence, "All under the king are ants," he couldn't help but feel a little horrified. In his opinion, the Age of Doom was definitely not as simple as the sea sweeping the earth. In particular, Han Fei's scalp went numb when he heard the sentence, "All living beings are sacrifices." After experiencing the heavenly desolate city, the undying soul realm, and this time, the prehistoric soul realm, Han Fei realized that the number of dead creatures in that era was probably beyond his imagination. Could it be that a simple phrase like "the sea sweeps across the land" could be used as a perfunctory answer? The third to come out was Li Luoluo. However, when Li Luoluo saw Han Fei, she immediately smiled sweetly. "Brother, sister." Puff. Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. "Li Kiki?" Han Fei tried to ask Li Kiki something. The result was obviously that she didn't know anything. What could you ask an 8-year-old child? However, Luo Xiaobai said to him via voice transmission, "Can Li Kiki walk out of the timeline alone?" Han Fei was slightly startled and didn't say anything. "Be careful in the future." Han Fei also expressed doubts in his heart. He hadn't seen Li Kiki fight. He even felt that Li Kiki shouldn't be able to fight. However, Luo Xiaobai reminded him, "Can an 8-year-old girl really walk out of the turbulence of time?" Suddenly, a hole appeared in the sky. A spear light flashed in the sky, and the sharpness of the spear was extremely strong. It was as if his body would be pierced if he was touched by that aura. Zhang Xuanyu's figure appeared. However, the surface of his body had long been tattered, and the terrifying sharpness had also been restrained. After Zhang Xuanyu landed, he chuckled. "I've benefited a lot from my narrow escape." Where's the fatty? Bam! A mountain exploded, and a shadowy big mouth appeared. It was the sky-swallowing technique that Luren Kuang had recently comprehended. Han Fei said, "Kuang Kuang, what are you doing?" The big mouth bit at Han Fei. Everyone's expression changed, because Luren Kuang was full of killing intent at this moment. Chapter 1087. They had never expected that Luren Kuang would go crazy. Although this guy's name had the word crazy in it, under normal circumstances, it was not a problem to call him Luren Was. Since the first time they met, Luren Kuang had never lost control and went crazy. Since he went crazy this time, it meant that what Luren Kuang encountered was probably very terrible. Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Hold him down!" Vines swept through the ground, the void, and even a huge flower wrapped around him. However, Luren Kuang pressed his armor box, and a storm of wind blades was much faster and more powerful. Luo Xiaobai's spiritual plants were torn into pieces. Because they were on the same side, Luo Xiaobai couldn't really fight with all her strength. She could only count on Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu to suppress them. Zhang Xuanyu roared, and his soul power rippled and fell on Luren Kuang. "Wake up!" Han Fei's behavior was even more violent. The embroidery needle shot out in an instant, and her whole body directly crashed into the blade storm, ignoring those violent, sharp blades. However, the big mouth still wanted to bite Han Fei, but Han Fei stepped on the ground, and the coiled turtle array appeared, and the golden giant clasped the big mouth with both hands. Demonic blade. Han Fei's pupils slightly constricted. This guy made the void tremble, and the true martial devil knife slashed at Han Fei. Kacha! The coiled turtle array was smashed by 2 slashes, and Han Fei launched the Monkey King 3000 strikes, which was extremely fast and violent. Anyway, Luren Quan's physique was not weak at all. Since she couldn't wake him up, she might as well smash him until he woke up. Bang, bang, bang. Under Zhang Xuanyu's shocked gaze, Han Fei hit Luren Quan more than 200 times in a row in a variety of postures, smashing half of the hill and finally knocking him out. Ooh, Han Fei took a breath. This fatty is really hard to beat when he goes crazy. After a long while, Luren Quan woke up and mumbled to himself, "Ouch, ouch, ouch. Why do I feel like I've been beaten?" Luo Xiaobai asked, "What happened to you?" Han Fei quickly cast the divine healing technique on him. He didn't throw it just now because he was afraid that Luren Quan would go crazy again. Now that he had woken up, he threw it at him. Luo Xiaobai said telepathically, "If there's anything important, tell us in private, not in front of Li Luo." Luren Quan's hands slightly shivered, and he said expressionlessly, "Ouch, you scared me. You guys don't know that I'm being chased by a bunch of fruits." Yes, fruits. They're bigger than humans, and they have mouths, all kinds of things. And bugs. I hate bugs, I hate bugs. Zhang Xuanyu said, "Sai, are you scared out of your wits? Fruits eat people?" Luren Quan crawled out. Of course. It was exceptionally ferocious. I also saw an incomparably huge fruit. I think I was poisoned, and then I don't remember anything. With that said, Luren Quan winked at the 3 of them, with Li Luo on his back. Li Kiki said adorably, "Brother Fatty, you are so pitiful." Luren Quan stiffened and looked at Li Luo in shock. "Kiki?" Han Fei looked at Luo Xiaobai. "Let's go and explore the prehistoric soul realm. Let's see if we can explore all 7 soul realms." Han Fei's idea was actually very simple. He even felt that he might have guessed why those people on the heavenly talent list didn't compete for rankings. Because the information obtained from a single soul realm was too little, but different soul realms seemed to be able to bring improvement to people. Therefore, in this kind of situation, most people wouldn't choose a dead-end path and would insist on walking it to the end. At this moment, Han Fei had the same idea. He had obtained a lot of information from the prehistoric soul realm. But for now, if he was only ranked 23rd, it would be more difficult to enter the top 10 or the top 3. After all, he and the others had already broken through the 3 soul realms, which last part of the spirit realm was easy to walk. Although he was forced to use the Demon King's contract and didn't have a chance to carefully experience the 3 demon plants in the demon plant soul realm. But it wasn't easy. In Han Fei's opinion, the battles in the undying soul realm and the graveyard of the homeless shouldn't be passed by humans at all. The Blue Sea Soul realm was even more amazing as an ancient black dragon appeared. God knew what kind of creature would appear in the end in this prehistoric soul realm. He was not afraid. The existence of a soul realm was mainly to help humans gain experience and accelerate their growth. Indeed, he could gain more growth from the next 3 secret realms. At that time, if he went back to the prehistoric soul realm, the result might be better. Luo Xiaobai thought for a while and agreed. Okay, let's go to the other soul realms first. However, if nothing unexpected happens, we must be careful in the war soul realm. The 6th and 7th soul realms are extremely mysterious. If the big clans want to take action, then the 5th soul realm may be their best opportunity. Han Fei nodded. Zhang Xuanyu grinned. Hey, I like to see what the big clans can do. Luren Quang said, "We can fight." Li Kiki blinked her eyes. Are we going to fight? Everyone was stunned. Han Fei and the others were speechless. By the way, Li Kiki was still an 8-year-old child. Was he going to take her to the War Soul realm? However, Li Luo was not weak. Without her, his side would indeed lack a fighting force. Luo Xiaobai frowned and said, Kiki, can you ask Li Luo to come out? Li Kiki suddenly blinked her big eyes and said aggrievedly, Luo is asleep. Everyone was taken aback. Li Luo fell asleep? Zhang Xuanyu immediately said, Well, Kiki, we have something important to do now. Luo is asleep. Where is Li Kuang? Can you ask him to come out? Li Kiki pouted. Oh. Li Kiki closed her eyes gloomily. After a pause of more than 10 minutes, Li Luo's eyes suddenly opened, full of fanaticism. Ha ha ha. I heard you were looking for me? Like I said, Li Kuang, am the one who is most needed. Brothers, why did you call me? The faces of Zhang Xuanyu and the others stiffened. She came out too fast. Luo Xiaobai said, there must be something wrong with Li Kiki. She can control the personality change at will. Since she can control it, she can suppress it. Otherwise, according to Li Kuang's character, I'm afraid he will come out by himself. Hearing Luo Xiaobai's words, Han Fei looked at Li Kuang with a smile and said, Brother Kuang, we're going to do something big. Are you interested? Li Kuang was overjoyed and patted Han Fei heavily. Of course, I'm good at fighting. Since Li Kuang had come out, no matter whether there was a problem or not, his combat power would increase, which was better than an 8-year-old Li Kiki, right? The outside world. Before the prehistoric Soul Realm, the changes on the steel attracted many people's attention. After all, Han Fei's performance in the first 3 Soul Realms was really eye-catching. Therefore, many people were relieved that Han Fei stopped at the 23rd place. Although he was still very strong, as long as he didn't enter the top 3, it meant that Han Fei was not as strong as the strongest heavenly talent in history. After all, when Han Fei went in, he asked Tang Yin and Li Daxian about it. At that time, everyone thought that Han Fei wanted to take their places. Those who paid attention to the list had high expectations. Now, the result of this ranking was much more reassuring. However, this time, to everyone's surprise, unexpectedly, all 5 members of the Thug Academy were on the list, and their rankings were not low, especially on the way back. Lu Renkuang avoided Li Kuang and said to Han Fei and the others via voice transmission, If I say I saw the corpse of a king, do you believe me? At that moment, Han Fei and the others were shocked. Although it was abnormal, Li Kuang didn't care. This also made Han Fei and the others slightly relieved. Han Fei responded, Don't panic, calm down. No. Fatty, are you sure it's a king? Lu Renkuang responded, It should be. He seemed to say something to me in the end. It's just that I didn't seem to be in a good state of mind at that time. I don't remember it clearly. It seems to be slaying a god or something. Zhang Xuanyu rolled his eyes and responded, Fatty, don't fool me. Are you sure it's slaying a god? Slaying what god? However, Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai were lost in thought. This kind of thing didn't seem impossible. If Han Fei hadn't seen that big hand, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But he had seen it and was beaten by it. Oh no, to be precise, the ape he possessed wasn't even qualified to be beaten by it. It was just a simple press, and in the end, he lost most of his life. Luo Xiaobai thought of the saying, all are ants under the king. It didn't seem impossible to think of slaying a god as slaying a king. After all, in the eyes of mortals, what was the difference between a king and a god? Han Fei couldn't help asking, what did you see in the timeline? Zhang Xuanyu said, I possessed a person and practiced a peerless spear technique. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. How peerless? Zhang Xuanyu chuckled, shattering the void and opening the gate of heaven. Luo Xiaobai said in surprise, So you got a combat skill? Zhang Xuanyu thought for a while. It's not a combat skill, but a path. The path I opened up is very compatible with my own path. I have a hunch that once I become a law enforcer, I might be very strong. The few of them clicked their tongues. They didn't know if Zhang Xuanyu was bragging. However, if he said he would be strong, then he would be strong. Zhang Xuanyu asked, Fei, what did you encounter? Han Fei thought for a while. That scene would probably shock them to the core if they were to hear it. So Han Fei changed his words. I experienced the power of an explorer.